You have just woken up as an orca beneath the endless polar night of Antarctica. For the next 3 hours, you are going to shatter ice slabs with your forehead, shadow a blue whale through pitch-black depths, and even flush a terrified seal from its frozen perch with a rolling wave hand. This won't be easy, so good luck. But before we get into this journey of the orca, I'd appreciate it if you could subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment on where you're tuning in from and which animal I should cover next. Now let's begin this epic adventure together. The first hint of dawn touches the Pacific surface 300 feet above, but down here in the twilight realm, where our orca moves, darkness still holds dominion. She is 42 years old, a female weighing nearly 6 tons, her sleek black and white form cutting through water that tastes of salt and ancient minerals dissolved from distant mountains. The ocean around her pulses with life-microscopic plankton catch what little light filters down, creating brief sparks like underwater stars, while the distant songs of her podmates weave through the water in frequencies that vibrate through her massive skull. Her world begins with pressure. 20 atmospheres press against her streamlined body, a weight that would crush human lungs but feels natural to her after 4 decades of diving. The water here moves differently than at the surface, denser, more viscous, carrying sounds farther and vibrations deeper. Every movement of her powerful tail sends ripples that she can feel bouncing back from the seafloor 200 feet below, painting a picture of underwater mountains and valleys in her mind through echolocation clicks she produces without conscious thought. The taste of the sea tells her everything. Salt levels indicate ocean currents, while chemical traces speak of prey schools miles away. She can detect the faint metallic tang of fish blood from yesterday's hunt still lingering in the water, mixed with the organic compounds released by dying plankton and the mineral signatures of underwater volcanic vents hundreds of miles to the west. Her tongue, massive and surprisingly agile, flicks out to sample these chemical messages that lesser predators cannot even perceive. But it is the calls of her family that truly define her underwater universe. The matriarch's voice deeper and more resonant than any other pulses through the water at frequencies that travel for miles. These are not random sounds, but a sophisticated language developed over generations, with specific calls for different situations. The hunting whistle that signals prey ahead, the contact call that keeps the pod together in murky water, and the celebration trill that follows a successful kill. Our orca knows every voice in her family group of 23 individuals, can distinguish between her sister's urgent bark and her nephew's playful chatter, even when they are miles apart. The water temperature tells its own story of seasonal change. At 54 degrees Fahrenheit, it carries the crisp edge of autumn, several degrees cooler than the summer waters that brought abundant salmon runs just weeks ago. This cooling signals the beginning of migration season, when her pod will follow ancient routes carved into their collective memory through countless generations. The thermal layers create highways in the ocean streams of warmer or cooler water that help them navigate across thousands of miles with pinpoint accuracy. Her stomach contracts with familiar hunger, empty now for 18 hours since the last substantial meal. Unlike the constant foraging of smaller sea creatures, orcas hunt in bursts of intense activity, followed by long periods of digestion and rest. Her metabolism has slowed during the night, conserving energy while her family slept in the synchronized breathing patterns that mark their deepest rest. Now, with dawn approaching, her body awakens to its primary imperative, the need to feed. The hunt begins not with movement but with listening. Her melanthe-rounded organ in her forehead focuses sound waves like an acoustic lens, sweeping the water ahead for the telltale echoes of schooling fish. Each click she produces travels outward at over 3.0 miles per hour, bouncing off anything solid and returning with precise information about size, density, distance, and even internal structure. She can tell the difference between a salmon and a herring from half a mile away, can detect whether a fish is healthy or sick by the sound signature of its swim bladder. Her family moves in the formation learned through millions of years of evolution, the matriarch leading, followed by her daughters and their calves, with the adolescent males bringing up the rear. This is not random arrangement, but tactical positioning that maximizes hunting success while protecting the youngest members. Each orca maintains precise spacing that allows for coordinated movement while avoiding collision during high-speed pursuits. They communicate constantly through subtle body language invisible to surface observers. A slight change in fin angle signals intent to dive, while a particular arch of the back indicates the detection of prey. The pressure around her begins to change as the pod rises slowly toward the hunting grounds above. Her body adjusts automatically. Blood vessels in her lungs constrict to prevent nitrogen absorption, while specialized tissues in her ears equalize pressure without the painful sensations that would cripple air-breathing mammals at these depths. Her heart rate slows to conserve oxygen, while her spleen releases stored red blood cells to maximize the oxygen-carrying capacity of her blood. As they ascend, the water gradually brightens. Bioluminescent creatures become visible jellyfish pulsing like living galaxies, while deep-sea fish flash their own light signals in an alien language of survival. The chemical composition of the water changes too, becoming less dense and more alive, with the microscopic organisms that form the base of the ocean's food web. Our orca's sophisticated palate reads these changes like a roadmap, understanding that rich feeding grounds lie ahead, where nutrients from the deep mix with sunlight from above. Her dorsal, for nearly 6 feet tall and curved backward from years of cutting through water, breaks the surface tension as the pod reaches the thermocline where warm surface water meets the cold depths below. Here, in this boundary layer where two different ocean worlds meet, prey often concentrates in dense schools. The taste of surface water carries different messages: traces of recent storms, runoff from distant shores, and the oily signatures of marine mammals that breathed this air just hours ago. The anticipation builds in her massive frame as hunting instincts refined over eons take control. Her vision, adapted for underwater hunting, scans the water ahead for the silver flash of schooling fish or the awkward movements of seals. Her hearing sorts through the cacophony of ocean sounds: wave action above, whale songs in the distance, the clicking of dolphins, and the subtle sounds of her own family's breathing at the surface to focus on the frequencies that indicate prey. This is the moment before the hunt, when potential energy builds like a coiled spring. Her 6-ton body hovers in perfect neutral buoyancy, powerful muscles tensed and ready to explode into action. The ocean around her holds its breath, waiting for the ancient drama of predator and prey to begin once again, as it has every dawn for millions of years in these same waters where her ancestors learned the art of cooperative hunting that makes orcas the ocean's apex predators. Breakfast pursuit. The first herring appears on her sonar like a silver spark in the darkness, followed quickly by dozens more as her echolocation paints a 3-dimensional picture of the school ahead. They move in that distinctive herring formation, a loose, constantly shifting cloud of fish that expands and contracts like a living organism, responding to invisible currents and chemical signals. Our orca's excitement ripples through her massive frame as she recognizes the signature of perhaps 10,000 fish, enough to feed her entire family with surplus to spare. Her clicks quicken and sharpen, becoming the rapid-fire sonar burst that orcas use for precision hunting. Each sound pulse returns with detailed information. The school extends roughly 400 feet in diameter, moving at about 6 knots in a northeastern direction, staying within 50 feet of the surface, where the morning light creates the shadows they use for camouflage. She can even detect the health of individual fish, the strong swimmers at the school's center, the weaker ones struggling at the edges, and the parasites that cling to their scales. The matriarch's hunting call resonates through the water, a sound unlike any other in the ocean. It carries the authority of 60 years of successful hunts, commanding immediate attention from every family member. Within seconds, the loose traveling formation transforms into a coordinated hunting unit. The adult females spread out in a wide arc, positioning themselves to cut off potential escape routes, while the juveniles hang back to observe and learn. This is education through participation, the way orcas have passed hunting knowledge from generation to generation for millions of years. Our protagonist takes her position on the left flank of the formation, her body angled to intercept any fish that might try to flee toward the deeper water where they might escape. Her sister moves to mirror her position on the right, creating a living fence that will funnel the herring toward the killing zone. The coordination requires no vocal communication now. Each orca knows her role through decades of practice, moving with the fluid precision of a ballet performed in 3 dimensions. The bubble net technique begins with the oldest female, the matriarch's sister, diving deep beneath the school. Her massive lungs, capable of holding enough air for a 20-minute dive, allow her to circle beneath the herring while releasing controlled bursts of bubbles from her blowhole. The effect is spectacular. Thousands of tiny air bubbles rise through the water column, creating a cylindrical net of moving silver that confuses and disorients the fish. To the herring, these bubbles appear as a solid barrier they cannot pass through, an illusion that traps them as effectively as any human-made net. The herring school compresses as panic spreads through their ranks. Their natural response to threat is to ball up into an even tighter formation, but this defensive behavior actually makes them more vulnerable to orca hunting tactics. The silver mass of fish begins to roil and churn as individuals try to find escape routes that no longer exist. Their collective movement creates flashes of reflected light that our orca can see from hundreds of yards away, nature's own signal flare announcing the location of the feast. Now comes the most spectacular part of the hunt. Our orca accelerates from her patrol position, her powerful tail driving her forward with enough force to push her 6-ton body through the water at nearly 30 miles per hour. The physics of her movement are extraordinary. Her streamlined shape creates almost no turbulence, while specialized skin that can ripple and flex reduces drag to a minimum. She approaches the trapped school like a guided missile, her target acquisition systems locked onto the densest concentration of fish. The tail slap technique requires perfect timing and devastating force. She positions herself just outside the bubble net, then arcs her body into a position that would be impossible for any land mammal-tail flukes raised high above the surface, ready to deliver a blow that can be heard for miles underwater. Her tail, each fluke nearly 4 feet across and powered by muscles that dwarf those of any terrestrial predator, comes down on the water surface with explosive force. The concussion from the slap travels through the water like a shock wave, stunning dozens of herring instantly while sending the rest into complete panic. Fish flip belly up, their swim bladders compressed by the pressure wave, while others dart frantically in all directions only to encounter the bubble barriers or the waiting jaws of other family members. The water around the school becomes a chaos of silver bodies and swirling bubbles, nature's own feeding frenzy orchestrated with surgical precision. Our orca opens her massive jaws, revealing 48 conical teeth, each the size of a human thumb. But these teeth are not for chewing. Orcas swallow their prey whole, using their teeth only to grip and position fish for easier swallowing. Her throat, capable of expanding like a pelican's pouch, engulfs dozens of herring in a single gulp. The fish slide easily down her gullet, which can accommodate prey as large as a small seal without difficulty. The feeding is both individual and cooperative. While each orca catches her own fish, there is an understood hierarchy that determines feeding order. The matriarch and her daughters feed first, followed by the juveniles, with the youngest calves often sharing fish directly from their mothers' mouths. This social structure ensures that the most important members of the pod, the breeding females and the genetic future represented by the calves here, always well nourished. Within 15 minutes, the school of 10,000 herring has been reduced to scattered survivors fleeing toward deeper water. Our orca's stomach, which can hold nearly 1,000 pounds of fish, now carries about 200 pounds of herring, enough nutrition to sustain her massive metabolism for the next day. Her family has taken similar amounts, with the smaller juveniles eating proportionally less, while the massive matriarch has consumed perhaps 300 pounds. The hunt's aftermath reveals the sophisticated social dynamics that make orcas such successful predators. Younger family members who were less successful at catching fish are allowed to scavenge from the remains floating at the surface, while the matriarch inspects each family member to ensure they have eaten adequately. This behavior, unknown in most predator species, demonstrates the complex emotional bonds that hold orca families together across decades. Chemical signals in the water now carry the scent of successful predation fish oils, blood, and the pheromones released by excited orcas create a complex bouquet that will attract scavengers from miles away while warning other prey species to avoid this area. Our orca tastes these signals with satisfaction, her body already beginning the process of converting the protein-rich herring into the energy she needs for the day's activities. The hunt has taken exactly 18 minutes from first contact to the last fish swallowed, a duration that reflects millions of years of evolutionary refinement in cooperative hunting techniques. As the family regroups and begins to swim slowly toward their next destination, our orca's movements already show the satisfaction of successful predation. Her swimming is more relaxed, her echolocation clicks less urgent, her breathing deeper and more rhythmic as her body shifts from hunting mode to the calm satisfaction of a predator well fed. Pod play bonds. The tension of the hunt dissolves into something entirely different as the family regroups in the aftermath of their successful herring feast. Our orca's nephew, barely 2 years old and still sporting the orange-tinged coloration that marks juvenile killer whales, approaches her with the playful confidence that only the young possess. His movements are uncoordinated compared to the adult's tail beats are irregular. His dives shallow and brief, but his enthusiasm is infectious as he initiates the first game of the morning. He bumps against her massive flank with his smaller body, a gesture that in any other predator species might signal aggression, but here represents pure, affectionate play. Our orca responds by rolling slightly to accommodate his contact, her movement gentle despite her overwhelming size advantage. This physical interaction serves multiple purposes beyond mere entertainment. It reinforces social bonds, teaches the young calf about appropriate social behaviors, and helps him develop the muscle memory that will one day make him an effective hunter. The matriarch watches these interactions with the focused attention of an experienced teacher. At 63 years old, she has guided the education of dozens of calves over her lifetime, understanding instinctively which behaviors to encourage and which require gentle correction. Her presence creates a zone of safety within which the younger animals can explore their physical capabilities without real risk, her massive bulk serving as both playground and protection. Other family members join the post-hunt social session, creating a complex web of interactions that would take human ethologists years to fully decode. Our orca's sister approaches with her own calf, and the two mothers begin the synchronized swimming that marks deep familial bonds. Their movements mirror each other precisely when one dives. The other follows at exactly the same angle and depth. When one surfaces to breathe, the other appears beside her with coordinated timing that seems almost telepathic. This breath synchronization represents one of the most remarkable aspects of orca social behavior. Each animal's breathing is normally an individual decision based on oxygen needs and activity level, but during these bonding sessions, the family breathes as one organism. The matriarch sets the rhythm, a deep inhalation that lasts exactly 4 seconds, followed by a dive that lasts precisely 47 seconds, then another coordinated surface breath. The entire family matches this pattern, creating a group rhythm that can be maintained for hours. The calves use this time to practice essential life skills under the watchful supervision of multiple adults. Our orca observes as her nephew attempts his first coordinated dive with the group, his small body struggling to match the depth and duration achieved effortlessly by the adults. When he surfaces early, gasping for air, there is no criticism. Instead, his mother moves beside him, demonstrating the proper breathing technique with exaggerated movements that make the lesson clear. Play among orcas involves more than simple physical interaction. The family engages in complex games that teach hunting skills, social cooperation, and communication techniques. One popular activity involves passing objects between family members: pieces of kelp, fragments of jellyfish, even small fish that are tossed and caught rather than eaten. These games develop the precise jaw control and spatial awareness that will later prove essential during coordinated hunts. Our orca participates in a particularly sophisticated game where family members take turns hunting each other in mock chases that could look threatening to outside observers, but are actually elaborate teaching exercises. She allows her nephew to pursue her, swimming slowly enough that his underdeveloped speed can keep pace while occasionally diving or turning to present him with tactical challenges. When he successfully anticipates her movements and closes the distance, she rewards him with gentle physical contact and encouraging vocalizations. The acoustic dimension of play is as complex as the physical interactions. Family members engage in vocal games where they modify their calls in playful ways, stretching the normal hunting whistle into exaggerated warbles, creating harmonies by timing their calls to overlap, or engaging in rapid-fire exchanges that sound almost like laughter. These vocalizations serve as audio signatures that reinforce individual recognition and family identity while providing entertainment. Temperature regulation becomes part of the social interaction as the family members position themselves to share body heat. Orcas generate tremendous amounts of internal heat through their high metabolism lifestyle, but the cold Pacific waters constantly draw this heat away through their skin. By swimming close together, with smaller animals positioned near the larger adults, the pod creates microclimates that reduce individual energy expenditure while maintaining optimal body temperature. The young calves receive the most attention during these bonding sessions, with multiple adults sharing responsibility for their education and protection. Our orca takes her turn as guardian, positioning herself between the calves and the open ocean while they practice diving and swimming techniques. Her role requires constant vigilance scanning for potential threats, while simultaneously monitoring the young animals' energy levels and breathing patterns to ensure they don't overexert themselves. Grooming behaviors emerge as family members use their teeth to remove parasites and dead skin from each other's bodies. This activity, known as allogrooming, serves both practical and social functions. The physical benefits include parasite removal and skin health maintenance, while the social aspects reinforce hierarchical relationships and demonstrate trust. Our orca allows her nephew to attempt grooming her flank, his small teeth ineffective, but his intent appreciated as part of his social development. The games gradually evolve to include more complex behaviors as the family's post-hunt energy levels remain high. They engage in synchronized leaping exercises where multiple animals breach the surface together, their massive bodies launching completely out of the water in displays of pure athleticism. These behaviors serve no obvious survival function but appear to be expressions of joy and physical well-being that strengthen the emotional bonds holding the family together. As the social session continues, subtle changes in the family dynamics become apparent. The matriarch's position remains central, but younger adults occasionally initiate activities that the entire group follows. This flexibility in leadership demonstrates the sophisticated political structure of orca society, where experience and age command respect but individual initiative is encouraged and rewarded when it serves the family's interests. The session concludes gradually as the family's attention turns toward other needs, the desire to move toward new feeding grounds, the need to check territorial boundaries, or simply the restless energy that drives apex predators to constant movement. But the bonds reinforced during this playtime will influence family interactions for days to come, creating the social foundation that makes their cooperative hunting strategies possible and ensuring that knowledge passes smoothly from one generation to the next. Into the abyss. The descent begins with a subtle shift in the matriarch's body language, a slight downward angle of her massive head, a particular pattern of echolocation clicks that signals deep hunting mode to the rest of the family. Our orca recognizes these signs immediately, her own body responding with physiological changes that prepare her for the crushing depths ahead. Her heart rate slows to conserve oxygen, while specialized blood vessels in her extremities constrict to maintain core temperature and pressure. At 50 feet below the surface, the familiar world of surface light begins to fade. The water here moves with different currents, carrying chemical signatures that speak of the deep ocean's mysteries. Our orca's sophisticated palate detects the metallic taste of minerals dissolved from deep-sea volcanic vents, the organic compounds released by creatures that never see sunlight, and most importantly, the particular chemical trail left by deep-dwelling squid, their target for this ambitious dive. The pressure increases dramatically with each passing moment. At 100 feet, the force pressing against her body equals the weight of 3 atmospheres, but her physiology adapts seamlessly. Air-filled cavities in her body compress according to Boyle's law, while her lungs collapse completely to prevent nitrogen from dissolving into her bloodstream. Her ribcage, flexible beyond anything found in terrestrial mammals, compresses inward to accommodate these changes without injury. By 200 feet, they have entered the mesopelagic zone, the ocean's twilight realm, where bioluminescence begins to dominate the visual landscape. Strange creatures drift past like living constellations. Jellyfish that pulse with internal light, deep-sea fish whose photophores create patterns of blue and green fire, and microscopic organisms that flash briefly when disturbed by the pod's passage. Our Orca's vision, adapted for this underwater world, perceives these light displays with remarkable clarity despite the absence of surface illumination. The squid they pursue are Humboldt squid-aggressive predators, nearly as large as the orcas themselves, with tentacles lined with rotating hooks and beaks powerful enough to cut through steel cable. These are not the passive prey that schooling fish represent, but dangerous adversaries that require respect and careful hunting strategies. Their presence at this depth indicates a rich feeding ground where deep ocean currents bring nutrients from the abyssal depths to support large predator populations. At 250 feet, the pressure reaches nearly 8 atmospheres, creating an environment that would instantly kill most air-breathing animals. Our orca's body continues its remarkable adaptation. Spleen contracts to release stored red blood cells, increasing her blood's oxygen carrying capacity by nearly 30%. Specialized proteins in her muscles bind oxygen with extraordinary efficiency, while her metabolism shifts to favor anaerobic processes that require no oxygen at all. The water temperature drops significantly in this deep zone, falling to barely 40 degrees Fahrenheit. This cold would rapidly induce hypothermia in unprotected mammals, but our orca's thick blubber layer and counter-current heat exchange system maintain her core temperature within optimal ranges. Blood flowing to her extremities passes through vessels wrapped around returning venous blood, pre-warming the outbound circulation while recapturing heat from the returning flow. Communication becomes more challenging at these depths. Sound travels differently through the denser water, and the family must adjust their vocalizations accordingly. Their calls take on deeper tones that penetrate farther through the heavy medium, while their echolocation clicks sharpen to maintain accuracy in the more acoustically complex environment. Our orca listens carefully to these modified sounds, maintaining contact with family members who may be hundreds of yards away in the darkness. The first squid appears on her sonar as a complex, shifting signature unlike anything they encounter in surface waters. These creatures move with jet propulsion, their flexible bodies changing shape constantly as they maneuver through the water column. Their nervous systems, surprisingly sophisticated for invertebrates, make them formidable opponents capable of learning and adapting their behavior in response to predation pressure. At 300 feet, they reach the maximum depth for this hunt, entering a world of perpetual darkness where pressure reaches 10 times that at sea level. Here, the squid gather in loose aggregations, feeding on smaller deep-sea creatures while remaining vigilant for the threats that patrol these depths. The water carries strange sounds, the clicking of sperm whales hunting even deeper, the mechanical noises of deep-sea creatures, and the subtle sounds of tectonic activity from the ocean floor far below. The hunt requires different tactics than surface feeding. Speed becomes less important than stealth and precision, as the squid's jet propulsion can accelerate them away from danger faster than even an orca can pursue. Instead, the family uses ambush techniques, positioning themselves to cut off escape routes while individual hunters approach their targets with careful, controlled movements that minimize disturbance in the water. Our orca's target is a mature female squid nearly 12 feet long, her tentacles extended to catch smaller prey drifting through the dark water. The approach requires infinite patience. Any sudden movement or sound could trigger the squid's escape response, sending her jetting away into the darkness faster than pursuit would be possible. Our orca moves with glacial slowness, each beat of her tail calculated to create minimal disturbance. The metabolic demands of hunting at this depth create unique challenges. Oxygen consumption must be minimized to extend dive duration, while the cold water constantly draws heat from even the best insulated body. Our orca's hunting strategy reflects these constraints: quick, efficient strikes that minimize energy expenditure while maximizing the chance of success. There is no room for error when every breath must be earned through a 300-foot ascent to the surface. The bioluminescent displays of deep-sea creatures create both opportunities and challenges for hunting. The flashing lights can reveal the positions of prey, but they also serve as warning systems that alert potential victims to approaching danger. Our orca has learned to use these light displays to her advantage, timing her approaches to coincide with natural fluctuations in the biological illumination that surrounds her. The pressure at maximum depth creates a profound sense of calm that experienced deep divers recognize. The physiological changes required for survival at these depths induce a meditative state where heart rate slows, brain activity shifts, and perception narrows to focus entirely on the essential tasks of survival and hunting. This deep-diving trance represents one of the most remarkable altered states of consciousness found in the natural world. As she closes the distance to her chosen target, our orca experiences the heightened awareness that comes with hunting in the abyss. Every sensation becomes magnified: the taste of squid ink in the water, the electrical fields generated by the prey's nervous system, the subtle pressure waves created by tentacle movements. In this alien world of crushing pressure and eternal darkness, she becomes the perfect predator her evolution has designed her to be. Song of the Sea. The underwater acoustic landscape surrounding our orca is far more complex than any human language, a three-dimensional symphony of sounds that carry meaning across vast distances through the ocean's depths. Her family's dialect, developed over countless generations, represents one of the most sophisticated communication systems found anywhere in the animal kingdom. Each call serves multiple functions, maintaining family cohesion, coordinating hunting strategies, sharing emotional states, and passing cultural knowledge from mother to calf in an unbroken chain stretching back millions of years. Her own voice emerges from a complex anatomical system unique to toothed whales. Deep within her massive head, specialized structures called phonic lips vibrate to create sounds, while her melantha-rounded organ in her forehead focuses these acoustic signals like a biological lens. She can produce multiple sounds simultaneously, layering frequencies to create calls of extraordinary complexity. The resulting vocalizations can travel for dozens of miles through the ocean, carrying messages that maintain contact with distant family members and coordinate activities across territories larger than entire states. The matriarch's voice commands immediate attention whenever it resonates through the water. Her calls carry the authority of 6 decades of experience, encoded in frequency patterns and timing that younger family members instinctively recognize and obey. When she produces the deep, warbling call that signals "gather close," every member of the pod responds immediately, regardless of their current activity. This acoustic dominance reflects her position as the repository of the family's collective knowledge: hunting grounds, migration routes, seasonal patterns, and survival strategies accumulated over a lifetime of leadership. Our orca's echolocation represents a sensory capability so advanced that human technology has only recently begun to approximate its precision. She produces rapid-fire clicks at frequencies up to 100 Hz, far beyond human hearing range, then processes the returning echoes to create detailed, three-dimensional images of her environment. This biological sonar can detect objects smaller than ping-pong balls at distances exceeding half a mile, while also providing information about internal structure, density, and even emotional state in other marine mammals. The precision of her acoustic targeting system becomes apparent during hunting sequences. She can adjust the frequency, duration, and beam width of her clicks to match specific hunting situations: broad beam scans for initial prey detection, narrow beam focus for target identification, and rapid-fire bursts for close-range navigation through complex underwater terrain. Her melon reshapes itself constantly during these activities, changing from spherical to oval to match the acoustic requirements of each moment. But perhaps most remarkably, she can hunt in complete acoustic stealth when circumstances require it. During these silent periods, she relies entirely on passive listening, her sensitive hearing capable of detecting the subtle sounds produced by prey animals, the flutter of fish fins, the whistle of air through marine mammal blowholes, or the almost inaudible sounds of invertebrates moving through the water column. This ability to go dark acoustically makes her one of the ocean's most effective ambush predators. The family's vocal repertoire includes dozens of distinct call types, each serving specific communicative functions. Contact calls maintain pod cohesion when visibility is limited, with each family member possessing a unique acoustic signature that allows individual identification across miles of ocean. Excitement calls, produced during successful hunts or social play, spread rapidly through the group and can trigger coordinated behavioral changes. Warning calls alert the family to potential dangers, with different vocalizations for different types of threat sharks, boats, or competing orca pods. Emotional communication through vocalizations reveals the deep psychological complexity of orca society. Grief calls, produced when family members die or become separated, can continue for days and travel enormous distances as the pod attempts to locate missing individuals. Celebration calls follow successful hunts or reunions, characterized by rapid exchanges between multiple family members that create almost musical harmonies. Play calls accompany social interactions, with younger animals often producing exaggerated versions of adult vocalizations as they practice their acoustic skills. The learning process for vocal communication begins before birth, with unborn calves exposed to their family's dialect while still in the womb. After birth, mothers engage in intensive vocal tutoring, repeating key calls until their offspring can reproduce them accurately. This process can take years to complete, with adolescent orcas occasionally producing imperfect calls that mark them as students, still mastering their family's acoustic traditions. Cultural transmission through vocalizations creates distinct dialects that serve as acoustic signatures for different orca populations. Our orca's family speaks a dialect shared with only a few related pods, creating an exclusive communication network that excludes outsiders while binding family groups together. These dialects evolve slowly over generations, with new calls occasionally emerging while others fade from use, creating linguistic evolution that parallels human language development. The physics of underwater sound transmission creates unique challenges and opportunities for orca communication. Low-frequency calls can travel for hundreds of miles through the ocean's sound channel, allowing family members to maintain contact across vast distances. High-frequency echolocation clicks provide precise short-range information but dissipate rapidly with distance. Our orca switches between these frequency ranges constantly, matching her acoustic output to her immediate communication needs. Seasonal changes in ocean conditions affect how sounds travel through the water, requiring constant adjustments in vocal behavior. Summer thermoclines reflect sound waves differently than winter mixing layers, while storms create acoustic shadows that can block communication entirely. Our orca has learned to compensate for these changes, modifying her call patterns and timing to maintain effective communication regardless of environmental conditions. The silence that occasionally falls over the family group is as meaningful as their vocalizations. These quiet periods, when all vocal communication ceases, often precede major behavioral changes, the beginning of long-distance migrations, approaches to sensitive hunting grounds, or responses to potential threats. During these times, the family relies on subtle body language and close physical proximity to coordinate their activities, demonstrating that their communication system extends far beyond acoustic signals. Her ability to distinguish between the vocalizations of her own family and those of other orca populations protects the pod from acoustic confusion in areas where multiple groups overlap. Each family's dialect serves as both identification and exclusion mechanism, preventing the mixing of incompatible hunting strategies or social behaviors while maintaining the genetic and cultural integrity of distinct populations. Coastal patrol. The rocky coastline rises from the depths like an underwater mountain range, its vertical walls dropping 300 feet into the Pacific's dark embrace. Our orca approaches these fjord walls with the focused attention of an apex predator entering prime hunting territory, her massive body moving with surprising grace through the kelp forests that carpet the nearshore environment. Here, where tectonic forces have carved the land into dramatic underwater cliffs and hidden caves, marine life concentrates in densities that make patient hunting extraordinarily rewarding. Her echolocation paints detailed pictures of the complex terrain ahead, rocky overhangs where rockfish shelter in schools of thousands, kelp holdfasts anchored to granite faces that harbor octopi and crabs, and most importantly, the underwater ledges and caves where harbor seals rest between feeding sessions. The returning echoes reveal not just the physical structure of the environment, but the biological signatures of creatures hiding within it, their different tissue densities, creating distinct acoustic fingerprints that her experienced brain interprets with remarkable precision. The kelp forest creates an acoustic maze that requires sophisticated navigation skills. Giant kelp fronds, some reaching lengths of over 100 feet, sway in the current like underwater trees, their movement creating complex sound shadows and reflections that could confuse less experienced hunters. Our orca has learned to read these acoustic patterns like a roadmap, understanding how kelp movement indicates current direction, prey concentration, and the presence of other predators that might interfere with her hunting. Her memory of this coastline spans decades of patrol routes, encoded in neural pathways that record every significant feature with photographic precision. She knows which underwater ledges typically harbor resting seals during different tidal cycles, which kelp beds produce the best fishing during specific seasons, and which areas to avoid when Pacific storms create dangerous surge conditions. This cognitive mapping system allows her to navigate complex underwater terrain with confidence, even during low visibility conditions. The magnetic field detection system that guides her long-distance navigation also provides precise positioning information during coastal patrols. Iron-rich rocks in the cliffsides create local magnetic anomalies that serve as underwater landmarks, while the Earth's magnetic field lines provide constant directional reference. Her ability to sense these invisible forces allows her to maintain exact positioning relative to hunting grounds, even when currents or poor visibility might otherwise cause disorientation. A group of harbor seals surfaces near a rocky promontory ahead, their sleek heads bobbing as they scan for predators before diving to feed on the rich fish populations below. Our orca immediately shifts into hunting mode, her echolocation becoming more focused and frequent, while her swimming pattern changes to minimize detection. Seals possess keen underwater hearing and will flee at the first indication of orca presence, making stealth essential for successful predation. The approach requires perfect understanding of local current patterns and tidal flows. Our orca positions herself down current from the seals, allowing their scent trail to reach her while preventing her own chemical signature from alerting them to her presence. She must also account for the complex acoustic environment created by waves breaking against rocky shores, timing her movements to coincide with periods of maximum natural noise that will mask her approach. Her hunting strategy exploits the seal's behavioral patterns with surgical precision. She knows that harbor seals typically dive for 3 to 5 minutes while feeding, then surface to breathe for approximately 30 seconds before diving again. During their brief surface intervals, they are most vulnerable to attack, but also most likely to detect approaching danger. Her timing must be perfect, close enough to strike during their vulnerable breathing period, but concealed enough to avoid detection during their careful scanning behavior. The underwater topography creates ambush opportunities unavailable in open ocean hunting. Rocky overhangs provide concealment for approaches, while narrow channels between rock formations funnel prey into predictable paths. Our orca uses these features like a terrestrial predator might use vegetation for cover, positioning herself where geography works in her favor, while limiting escape routes for potential prey. Kelp forest hunting requires different techniques than open water predation. The dense vegetation can entangle unwary hunters while providing concealment for prey, but it also creates opportunities for those who understand its complexities. Our orca has learned to use kelp fronds as camouflage, allowing the swaying vegetation to break up her distinctive black and white coloration while she moves through the underwater forest like a 6-ton phantom. The density of marine life in these coastal waters creates a complex web of predator-prey relationships that our orca must navigate carefully. Schools of rockfish cluster around underwater pinnacles, their numbers so vast they create false targets on her sonar that could mask the approach of more valuable prey. Sea otters work the kelp beds above, their constant diving and surface activity creating acoustic signatures that might alert seals to unusual predator activity in the area. Her patrol pattern follows underwater contours invisible from the surface's submarine ridges that concentrate prey, deep channels that serve as highways for migrating fish, and the thermal boundaries where cold upwelling water meets warmer surface layers. These invisible features of the underwater landscape are as familiar to her as neighborhood streets might be to a terrestrial mammal, each one associated with specific hunting opportunities and seasonal patterns of prey abundance. The tidal cycle adds another layer of complexity to coastal hunting. During incoming tides, nutrients and small fish are swept from shallow areas toward deeper water, concentrating prey along predictable pathways. Outgoing tides reverse this process, creating different hunting opportunities as marine life follows the changing water levels. Our orca's internal clock, synchronized with lunar cycles over decades of coastal living, allows her to arrive at specific hunting grounds precisely when conditions are optimal. Temperature differences between deep ocean water and shallow coastal areas create distinct hunting zones with different prey assemblages. The cold water rising from the depths brings nutrients that support vast populations of small fish, while the warmer nearshore waters favor different species that prefer temperate conditions. Our orca moves between these thermal zones like a rancher, checking different pastures, knowing which areas will be most productive at any given time. Rocky reef structures extend far below the surface, creating underwater cities of marine life that require careful navigation. Her sonar reveals the complex architecture of these submerged ecosystemscapes that house lingcod and cabezon, crevices where rockfish shelter during daylight hours, and sandy patches between rocks where flatfish bury themselves in sediment. Each microhabitat supports different prey species that require specialized hunting techniques. The acoustic signature of a healthy seal colony carries distinctive characteristics that our orca recognizes from miles away. The combined breathing patterns of dozens of animals create a rhythmic sound that pulses through the water, while their underwater vocalizations during feeding and social interactions add harmonic complexity to the acoustic landscape. She can estimate the size of seal groups and their activity levels long before visual contact, allowing her to decide whether an approach is worth the energy expenditure. Seasonal changes transform the coastal environment in ways that significantly impact hunting strategies. Winter storms create surge conditions that make nearshore hunting dangerous, while summer upwelling events can concentrate prey in dense aggregations that support extended coastal residence. Our orca's migration patterns reflect these seasonal rhythms, timing her coastal patrols to coincide with peak prey availability while avoiding periods of environmental stress. The fjord's steep underwater walls create unique acoustic conditions that she has learned to exploit. Sound waves bounce off these vertical surfaces in predictable patterns, creating acoustic shadows where she can approach undetected and acoustic amplification zones where even small sounds are magnified. Her understanding of these acoustic properties allows her to hunt more effectively while maintaining the stealth essential for ambush predation. Navigation through kelp forests requires constant adjustments to echolocation patterns. The dense vegetation absorbs and scatters sound waves differently than open water, requiring modified click patterns and frequencies to maintain accurate environmental awareness. She has developed specialized echolocation techniques for these environments, using lower frequencies that penetrate vegetation more effectively while adjusting her click rates to account for the complex acoustic reflections. Salmon run feast. The river mouth stretches before them like nature's own amphitheater, where glacial meltwater carries the mineral taste of distant mountains into the salt embrace of the Pacific. Our orca arrives at the convergence point, where two worlds meet: the freshwater ecosystem that has nurtured salmon through their juvenile years, and the ocean domain where these fish have spent their adult lives accumulating the rich oils and proteins that make them the most prized prey in the North Pacific. The timing of this arrival represents millions of years of evolutionary synchronization, predator and prey, locked in an ancient dance of seasonal abundance. Her memory holds detailed charts of dozens of river systems along the coast, each one tagged with specific information about salmon run timing, species composition, and optimal hunting locations. This river produces primarily Chinook salmon, the largest Pacific salmon species, with mature adults weighing up to 50 pounds each and carrying enough nutrition to sustain her massive metabolism for extended periods. The chemical signatures in the water tell her that the run is at peak intensity, with thousands of fish staging in the estuary before beginning their final journey to spawning grounds hundreds of miles upstream. The salmon themselves present a remarkable sight as they gather in the deeper pools near the river mouth. Their bodies, silver bright from years of ocean feeding, show the first signs of spawning transformation, males developing hooked jaws and humped backs, females swelling with eggs that represent the genetic future of their species. They move in massive schools that darken the water like living storm clouds, their collective weight temporarily altering the salinity and chemical composition of the mixing zone where fresh and salt water merge. Her family has spread out in a coordinated formation that transforms the river mouth into an inescapable trap. The matriarch positions herself at the deepest channel where salmon must pass to reach the river proper, while our orca and her sister patrol the shallower areas where fish might attempt to escape toward open ocean. The younger family members form a secondary line of defense, their primary role being to learn hunting techniques while preventing any salmon from slipping past the primary hunters. The hunting strategy requires perfect timing and coordination. Salmon runs follow tidal cycles, with fish moving upstream during high tide, when water levels provide adequate depth for navigation. Our orca must position herself to intercept these movements, while accounting for the complex current patterns created when river flow meets tidal action. The resulting hydraulics create turbulent zones where salmon become disoriented, making them more vulnerable to predation. Echolocation becomes particularly challenging in the mixing zone, where different water densities create acoustic boundaries that scatter sound waves unpredictably. Fresh water and salt water have different sound transmission properties, creating acoustic mirages that could confuse inexperienced hunters. Our orca compensates by adjusting her click patterns and frequencies constantly, maintaining accurate environmental awareness despite the acoustically complex hunting ground. The salmon's behavior during spawning runs makes them uniquely vulnerable to orca predation. Their single-minded focus on reaching spawning grounds overrides normal predator avoidance behaviors, causing them to swim in dense formations that ignore approaching danger. Their spawning physiology also affects their swimming ability. Males become less streamlined as their bodies change shape, while females heavy with eggs move more slowly than their normal oceanic pace. She employs the wave-washing technique that her family has perfected over generations, using her massive tail to create artificial waves that confuse and disorient salmon schools. The hydraulic force generated by her tail movements creates pressure waves that travel through the water like underwater tsunamis, disrupting the salmon's swim bladders and coordination. Fish caught in these pressure waves often lose their ability to maintain position in the current, making them easy targets for capture. The feast that follows represents one of nature's most spectacular feeding events. Our orca's jaws, capable of generating bite forces exceeding 19.0 pounds per square inch, make quick work of even the largest Chinook salmon. She typically consumes the richest parts first, the head, with its concentrated oils, and the belly full of nutritious roe before swallowing the remainder whole. A single large salmon provides nearly 40.0 calories, enough to sustain her massive metabolism for an entire day. Cooperation during the salmon feast extends beyond simple hunting coordination. Family members share information about salmon density and movement patterns through complex vocalizations, allowing the entire pod to optimize their feeding efficiency. Younger animals receive preferential access to the easiest fishing areas, while experienced hunters take on the more challenging aspects of herding salmon into optimal positions for group feeding. The nutritional impact of the salmon run will sustain the family through the challenging winter months ahead. These fish carry oils and proteins concentrated from years of ocean feeding, providing the dense nutrition that orcas require for their high-energy lifestyle. The fat content of spawning salmon, sometimes exceeding 20% of their body weight, allows orcas to build the blubber reserves essential for maintaining body temperature during long winter migrations. Competition with other predators adds complexity to the feeding frenzy. Brown bears fish the shallows upstream, while sea lions and harbor seals compete for salmon in the deeper waters of the estuary. Our orca must balance the energy expenditure of aggressive behavior toward competitors against the benefits of securing exclusive access to the richest fishing areas. Her size and the presence of her family group usually ensures dominance, but diplomatic encounters with other marine mammals require careful assessment of costs and benefits. The salmon run creates a temporary ecosystem of extraordinary abundance that attracts predators from hundreds of miles away. The concentration of nutrients supports populations of smaller fish that feed on salmon eggs and flesh, while the eggs themselves provide nutrition for invertebrates and marine plants. Our orca participates in this web of abundance not just as a predator but as a redistributor of nutrients. Her waste products, carrying salmon-derived compounds back to the open ocean, where they support the plankton communities that form the base of the marine food web. Environmental cues tell her when the salmon run is beginning to wane. The chemical signatures in the water change as fewer fish arrive from the ocean, while the behavioral patterns of remaining salmon shift toward greater urgency as spawning time approaches. Her family will time their departure to coincide with these changes, moving on to other feeding grounds while the salmon complete their reproductive cycle in the upper reaches of the river system. Teaching the young. The matriarch's ancient wisdom manifests most clearly during these teaching sessions, where 6 decades of accumulated hunting knowledge transfers to the youngest generation through patient demonstration and careful guidance. Our orca watches with deep attention as the family's eldest female positions herself near a group of juvenile harbor seals, her movements deliberately slow and exaggerated to ensure that her nephew and other young family members can observe every detail of the sophisticated hunting techniques that have kept their bloodline successful through countless generations. The 3-year-old calf, still bearing traces of his orange juvenile coloration, approaches the hunting lesson with the boundless enthusiasm typical of young orcas. His echolocation clicks are rapid and unfocused, creating acoustic clutter that would normally alert prey to predator presence. But the matriarch tolerates these beginner mistakes while gradually guiding him toward more effective sonar techniques. She demonstrates the proper frequency and timing of hunting clicks through her own vocalizations, creating audio examples that he attempts to copy with varying degrees of success. Our orca remembers her own education from 30 years earlier, when she was the eager student following the matriarch through these same waters. The teaching methods remain unchanged: patient repetition, gentle correction, and gradual introduction of increasingly complex hunting scenarios. But her role has evolved from student to assistant instructor, helping to reinforce lessons while allowing the matriarch to focus on the most challenging aspects of predator education. The lesson begins with basic prey identification and assessment. The matriarch approaches a mixed group of marine mammals resting on the surface, using her sonar to demonstrate how different species create distinct acoustic signatures. Harbor seals produce one pattern of echoes, sea lions another, while marine birds floating nearby create entirely different sound profiles. The young calf must learn to interpret these acoustic differences instantly, as misidentification during hunting could lead to wasted energy or dangerous encounters with inappropriate prey. Positioning and approach techniques require the most intensive instruction. The matriarch shows how to use underwater topography for concealment, approaching from down current to avoid scent detection, and timing attacks to coincide with prey vulnerability windows. Each element of the hunting sequence must become automatic, muscle memory developed through countless repetitions until proper technique occurs without conscious thought during the high-speed, high-stress moments of actual predation. The calf's first attempts at coordinated hunting reveal the enormous learning curve facing young orcas. His approach is too direct, lacking the subtle misdirection that prevents prey from detecting threat until escape becomes impossible. His timing is off, arriving at the intercept point either too early or too late to capitalize on the matriarch's herding efforts. Most critically, his understanding of cooperative hunting remains rudimentary, requiring constant guidance to maintain proper positioning relative to other family members. Our orca contributes to the education by serving as a moving target during practice sessions, allowing the calf to practice pursuit and interception techniques without the unpredictability of actual prey. She varies her speed and direction in ways that challenge his developing skills while remaining within his capability range, gradually increasing the complexity of maneuvers as his competence grows. These exercises develop the spatial reasoning and reaction times essential for successful predation. Communication protocols during hunting represent another crucial component of orca education. The calf must learn when to vocalize and when to maintain acoustic silence, understanding that different phases of hunting require different communication strategies. His early attempts at hunting calls often come at inappropriate times, potentially alerting prey to danger. but patient correction gradually shapes his vocal behavior toward the sophisticated timing that characterizes experienced hunters. The matriarch demonstrates energy conservation techniques that young orcas often overlook in their enthusiasm. She shows how to maintain optimal swimming speed that balances pursuit capability with energy expenditure, how to use currents and underwater terrain to reduce swimming effort, and most importantly, how to assess whether potential prey is worth the energy cost of pursuit. These lessons in hunting economics will prove crucial during times of prey scarcity, when energy balance becomes critical for survival. Risk assessment forms a major component of the educational curriculum. The matriarch exposes the calf to various hunting scenarios while carefully controlling the level of actual danger, teaching him to recognize situations where predation attempts could result in injury or death. Male elephant seals with their massive canine teeth, aggressive sea otters armed with powerful claws, and large sharks that might compete for the same prey all represent hazards that young orcas must learn to evaluate and avoid. Our orca observes how the teaching process adapts to individual learning styles and capabilities. Some calves master echolocation techniques quickly but struggle with cooperative positioning, while others excel at group coordination but need extensive practice with prey identification. The matriarch modifies her instruction methods accordingly, spending extra time on weak areas while building confidence through repeated success in areas of natural aptitude. The social dynamics of learning create their own educational opportunities. Young orcas must understand their position within the family hierarchy while developing the confidence necessary for effective hunting. They learn when to defer to more experienced hunters and when to take initiative, how to share information about prey locations without creating competition conflict, and most importantly, how their individual success contributes to the welfare of the entire family group. Physical development parallels cognitive learning as the calf's growing body begins to approach adult capabilities. His echolocation melon develops the focusing ability that enables precision hunting, while his jaw muscles gain the strength necessary for handling large prey. The matriarch adjusts training exercises to match these physical changes, gradually introducing techniques that would have been impossible at earlier developmental stages. Cultural transmission extends beyond hunting techniques to include the accumulated knowledge of generations, which areas provide the best hunting during different seasons, how to interpret environmental cues that predict prey movements, and the complex social protocols that govern interactions with other orca families. This cultural inheritance represents millions of years of evolutionary refinement, passed from mother to offspring in an unbroken chain of knowledge that ensures species survival. The patience required for effective teaching reflects the sophisticated intelligence that makes orcas such successful predators. The matriarch understands that rushed instruction leads to poor technique and potentially dangerous situations, while thorough education creates hunters capable of supporting themselves and contributing to family success throughout their lifetimes. Her investment in the calf's education today will pay dividends for the next 70 years of his life. Predator's mind. The calculation unfolds in her mind with the cold precision that separates successful apex predators from those that perish attempting poorly planned hunts. Our orca hovers motionless in the water column, her massive brain processing dozens of variables that will determine whether the elephant seal bull resting on the surface ahead represents an opportunity for a substantial meal or a potentially fatal encounter with one of the ocean's most formidable adversaries. At nearly 3 tons and armed with canine teeth the size of railroad spikes, male elephant seals demand the utmost respect from even the largest orcas. Her assessment begins with detailed analysis of the target's physical condition and behavioral state. The bull's breathing pattern indicates deep sleep, his massive bulk floating with the relaxed posture that makes large pinnipeds vulnerable to predation. But she also notes the placement of his flippers, the tension in his neck muscles, and the slight movements that suggest readiness to dive at the first sign of danger. Male elephant seals can accelerate from complete rest to 25 miles per hour in seconds, while their diving capability exceeds even that of orcas in duration if not depth. Energy expenditure calculations factor heavily into her decision-making process. A successful attack on this elephant seal would provide enough nutrition to sustain her family for several days, but failure could result in serious injury and massive energy loss, with no compensating benefit. She estimates the swimming speed required to close the distance before the seal can dive, the maneuvering energy needed to avoid his defensive capabilities, and the metabolic cost of handling such massive prey, even if the initial attack succeeds. Her memory provides data on previous encounters with elephant seals, both successful and unsuccessful. She recalls the bull that turned during her approach and raked her flank with teeth that left scars still visible years later, the female that proved surprisingly agile despite her bulk and escaped after a prolonged chase that left the entire family exhausted, and the successful coordinated attack that provided abundant food but required 3 hours of effort and perfect teamwork from 4 adult orcas. The tactical analysis extends to environmental factors that could influence the hunt's outcome. Current water temperature affects both her swimming performance and the seal's diving reflexes, while wave action could mask her approach or interfere with precise positioning during the critical attack phase. Wind direction influences scent dispersal that might alert the seal to danger, while underwater topography determines escape routes and potential ambush points should the initial approach fail. Risk assessment becomes particularly complex when evaluating elephant seal predation. Beyond the obvious physical dangers posed by the seal's size and defensive weapons, she must consider the energy cost of injury that could compromise future hunting ability. A damaged tail fluke would reduce swimming efficiency for months, while jaw injuries could prevent effective feeding even when prey is available. The mathematics of survival demand that potential benefits significantly outweigh probable risks. Her family's current nutritional status influences the risk-reward calculation significantly. With abundant salmon still available in nearby waters, the elephant seal represents luxury rather than necessity, shifting the equation toward caution rather than aggressive pursuit. However, if the family were facing food scarcity, the same target might justify considerably greater risk acceptance, demonstrating how external circumstances modulate predatory decision-making. She considers alternative prey options within the immediate area, weighing the certainty of smaller, safer targets against the substantial benefits of the challenging elephant seal. A group of harbor seals feeding nearby would provide easier hunting with minimal injury risk, while sea lions in the distance offer intermediate difficulty with moderate nutritional rewards. This comparative analysis helps optimize hunting strategies by selecting targets that provide the best risk-adjusted returns on energy investment. The presence of her family members adds another layer of complexity to the strategic calculation. Coordinated attacks significantly improve success probability while distributing risk among multiple participants, but they also require precise timing and communication that could fail under stress. She evaluates each family member's current condition, their experience with dangerous prey, and their positioning relative to the target to determine whether group hunting tactics would improve or compromise the mission's success probability. Injury prevention strategies occupy considerable mental bandwidth during dangerous hunt planning. She visualizes multiple attack scenarios, identifying the approach angles that minimize exposure to the seal's defensive capabilities while maximizing her own offensive advantages. The positioning must account for the seal's likely defensive reactions, the direction he would most probably roll, the teeth trajectories during defensive strikes, and the escape maneuvers he might attempt if the initial attack fails to achieve immediate incapacitation. Her experience with interspecies psychology provides insights into elephant seal behavior patterns that could influence hunting success. Males in breeding condition display heightened aggression and reduced flight responses, making them more dangerous but also less likely to flee immediately when threatened. Non-breeding animals typically prioritize escape over confrontation, but their faster reaction times compensate for reduced fighting motivation. Understanding these behavioral tendencies allows more accurate prediction of prey responses during attack scenarios. The decision-making process also incorporates long-term strategic considerations beyond the immediate hunt. Successful elephant seal predation could establish territorial dominance in this area, discouraging competitors and providing secure access to other prey species. Conversely, A failed attack might alert all marine mammals in the region to orca presence, reducing hunting efficiency for days, while prey animals maintain heightened vigilance. Weather pattern assessment influences timing considerations for dangerous hunts. Approaching storms could provide concealment through increased wave action and reduced visibility, but they also create conditions where precise maneuvering becomes more difficult and escape routes less predictable. Clear weather offers better attack precision but reduces concealment options, requiring careful evaluation of which conditions favor the specific hunting strategy being contemplated. Her analysis concludes with a probability assessment that weighs all variables against her family's current needs and alternative opportunities. The elephant seal represents a high-reward target, with corresponding high risks, requiring perfect execution to avoid serious consequences. In this instance, with abundant safer prey available and no immediate nutritional pressure, her predator's mind calculates that discretion serves her family's interests better than valor. The hunt continues, but with different, more manageable targets that offer better risk-adjusted returns on the energy and danger investments required for successful predation. Midday float. The post-feeding tranquility settles over our orca like a warm blanket as she enters the meditative state that follows successful predation, her massive body achieving perfect neutral buoyancy through subtle adjustments to internal air volumes and muscle tension. The morning's hunt has filled her stomach with nearly 300 pounds of salmon, and now her physiology shifts into the specialized rest mode that allows proper digestion while maintaining the vigilance essential for survival in the open ocean. Her breathing slows to barely 4 breaths per minute, each inhalation drawing nearly 60 gallons of air into lungs that can collapse completely under pressure while retaining their life-sustaining capacity. The phenomenon of unihemispheric slow-wave sleep begins as one hemisphere of her brain enters the delta wave patterns characteristic of deep rest, while the other maintains consciousness and environmental awareness. This remarkable adaptation allows her to float motionless at the surface, while remaining alert to potential threats or opportunities, her sleeping brain hemisphere processing the day's experiences and consolidating memories while her wakeful half monitors the acoustic landscape for danger signals or family communications. Her position in the water column requires constant micro-adjustments to maintain optimal floating posture. Unlike fish with swim bladders that automatically regulate buoyancy, she must consciously control her position through subtle changes in lung inflation and body angle. Too much air in her lungs and she rises toward the surface where wave action could interfere with rest. Too little, and she begins to sink toward depths, where maintaining position requires energy expenditure that defeats the purpose of rest periods. The physiological processes of digestion consume enormous amounts of energy as her body breaks down the protein-rich salmon into usable nutrients. Her stomach, capable of holding nearly 1,000 pounds of food, contracts rhythmically to grind and process the morning's catch, while specialized enzymes work to extract every possible calorie from the high-value prey. This digestive process generates significant heat, raising her core body temperature several degrees above normal and creating the warm, drowsy sensation that encourages extended rest periods. Skin regeneration accelerates during these quiet periods when blood flow can be redirected from locomotive muscles to healing and maintenance functions. The constant friction of moving through seawater at high speeds creates microscopic damage to her skin surface, while encounters with prey and underwater obstacles leave scratches and abrasions that require cellular repair. Her rest periods allow the massive blood flow to her skin to carry away metabolic waste products while delivering the nutrients and oxygen necessary for tissue regeneration. The cleaning station she has chosen provides additional benefits beyond simple rest. Small fish approach her motionless form to remove parasites and dead skin, creating a mutually beneficial relationship where she receives grooming services while the cleaners obtain easily accessible nutrition. These cleaner fish, primarily small wrasses and other reef species, work methodically across her skin surface, their movements creating gentle tactile sensations that seem to enhance her relaxation response. Her family members float nearby in a loose aggregation that maintains social cohesion while allowing individual rest needs. The matriarch's position anchors the group, her massive presence serving as a reference point that prevents the pod from drifting apart during their synchronized rest period. Younger animals sleep closer to their mothers, while adolescents test their independence by floating slightly farther away while still remaining within the protective umbrella of family oversight. Temperature regulation becomes a primary concern during extended surface rest periods. The Pacific's surface waters, warmed by direct solar radiation, can exceed optimal body temperature for extended periods, requiring behavioral thermoregulation through positioning and movement. Our orca occasionally dives briefly to cooler waters before returning to the surface, using these thermal transitions to maintain her core temperature within the narrow range required for optimal physiological function. The acoustic environment during rest periods provides a constant stream of information about distant activities and potential opportunities. She processes the sounds of other marine mammals breathing at the surface miles away, the calls of seabirds that might indicate feeding activity, and the low-frequency songs of other whale species that carry information about ocean conditions and prey availability. This passive acoustic monitoring requires minimal energy while providing maximum environmental awareness. Parasite removal becomes a significant focus during these cleaning sessions. Marine parasites primarily, copepods and barnacles create constant irritation and drag during normal swimming activities, making their removal essential for maintaining peak physical condition. The small, cleaner fish can access areas that she cannot reach herself, particularly around her dorsal fin and the posterior regions where flexible skin prevents effective self-grooming. Blood circulation patterns shift dramatically during rest periods as her cardiovascular system redirects flow from locomotive muscles to digestive organs and healing tissues. Her heart rate drops to barely 20 beats per minute, while specialized shunting mechanisms ensure that vital organs continue receiving adequate oxygen despite the reduced circulation rate. This cardiovascular adjustment allows maximum energy allocation to digestion and repair processes while maintaining the baseline functions necessary for survival. The social aspects of group resting reinforce family bonds through physical proximity and synchronized breathing patterns. When one family member surfaces to breathe, others often follow within seconds, creating coordinated respiratory rhythms that demonstrate the deep neurological connections between family members. These synchronized behaviors likely serve multiple functions, maintaining group cohesion, sharing information about rest quality, and reinforcing the social bonds that make cooperative hunting possible. Her position at the surface makes her vulnerable to the one threat that underwater predators rarely for serial attack from above. Although attacks from seabirds are extremely rare given her size, her resting brain hemisphere maintains constant vigilance for the shadows and sounds that might indicate danger from the sky. Her streamlined dorsal surface, evolved for hydrodynamic efficiency, also provides protection against potential aerial threats through its minimal profile when viewed from above. Mental processing during rest periods includes the consolidation of hunting memories and the integration of new environmental information into her vast cognitive map of the ocean. The morning's successful salmon hunt becomes encoded into long-term memory, while subtle environmental cues observed during the hunt are processed and categorized for future reference. This cognitive maintenance ensures that her hunting efficiency continues to improve throughout her lifetime, building an ever more sophisticated understanding of prey behavior and environmental patterns. The gradual awakening process begins as her resting brain hemisphere slowly returns to normal activity levels, while her wakeful half prepares for the transition back to active hunting mode. The entire rest period has lasted approximately 90 minutes, providing sufficient time for initial digestion, healing processes, and memory consolidation, while maintaining the activity schedule necessary for successful predation in the challenging environment of the open ocean. Alliances at sea. The distant calls reach our orca's ears long before the other pod becomes visible, their dialect carrying subtle differences that mark them as relatives from a neighboring territory rather than strangers to be avoided or competitors to be challenged. These acoustic signatures, refined over thousands of years of cultural evolution, serve as oceanic passports that identify family relationships and territorial agreements, spanning hundreds of miles of Pacific waters. Her family's response to these calls will determine whether the next few hours bring peaceful social exchange or tense territorial negotiation. The approaching pod consists of 11 individuals led by a matriarch who shares common ancestry with our Orca's family dating back several generations. This genetic connection, maintained through the female lineage that defines Orca society, creates obligations and opportunities that transcend the normal competitive relationships between apex predators. Their meeting represents a rare opportunity for genetic exchange, cultural information sharing, and the complex social negotiations that maintain the delicate balance between cooperation and competition in the ocean's top predator community. The initial approach follows protocols developed over millions of years of Orca social evolution. Both matriarchs position themselves at the front of their respective families, their massive presence serving as both greeting and warning, while younger animals maintain respectful distances behind the leaders. The vocalizations exchanged during these first moments carry complex information about family health, recent hunting success, territorial movements, and most importantly, the intentions that will guide this interpod encounter. Our Orca observes the subtle body language cues that accompany formal Orca diplomacy. The visiting matriarch's dorsal fin angle indicates peaceful intentions, while her swimming speed demonstrates confidence without aggression. The spacing between her family members reveals their current social dynamic state formations, suggest recent stress or external threats, while relaxed positioning indicates successful feeding and low territorial pressure. These visual cues complement the acoustic information to create a complete picture of the visiting pod's status and intentions. The genetic importance of these encounters cannot be overstated in the context of Orca reproductive strategy. The isolated nature of individual family groups creates constant risk of inbreeding that could compromise the genetic diversity essential for species survival. These rare meetings between related but separate pods provide opportunities for genetic exchange that maintain the chromosomal diversity necessary for adaptation to changing ocean conditions and disease resistance. Cultural exchange begins with the sharing of hunting information through specialized vocalizations that describe prey locations, seasonal movements, and environmental conditions in different territories. The visiting matriarch's calls include acoustic signatures that indicate successful salmon runs in northern waters, while our Orca's family shares information about the rich herring schools recently discovered in southern feeding grounds. This information exchange creates mutual benefits that extend far beyond the immediate encounter. The complex social hierarchies that govern interpod relationships require careful navigation to prevent conflicts that could result in injury or death. While both matriarchs maintain equal status within their respective families, their interaction must establish temporary precedents for decision-making during the joint activities that may follow. Age, family size, recent hunting success, and territorial strength all influence these negotiations, which occur through subtle behavioral cues rather than overt confrontation. Young adults from both families show particular interest in the social opportunities presented by interpod encounters. These meetings provide rare chances for adolescent orcas to interact with potential mates from genetically compatible bloodlines, while also offering educational opportunities to observe different hunting techniques and cultural practices. The careful supervision of these interactions by adult family members ensures that appropriate social boundaries are maintained while allowing for natural social development. Temporary alliance formation can emerge from successful interpod meetings when environmental conditions favor cooperative activities. Joint hunting expeditions allow both families to pursue larger prey or exploit feeding opportunities that might be beyond the capabilities of individual pods. These cooperative hunts require sophisticated coordination between families with different acoustic dialects and hunting traditions, demonstrating the remarkable behavioral flexibility that makes orcas such successful predators. The territorial implications of interpod encounters extend far beyond the immediate meeting location. Successful, peaceful interaction can establish or reinforce territorial agreements that prevent future conflicts over feeding grounds, while failed negotiations might result in territorial exclusion that limits access to important hunting areas. These agreements, maintained through acoustic communication over vast distances, create invisible boundaries that organize orca society across entire ocean basins. Competition for resources creates underlying tension even during peaceful interpod encounters. Both families require substantial food resources to maintain their high-energy lifestyle, and the presence of another pod in the area could reduce hunting efficiency through prey dispersion or direct competition for the same targets. The negotiations that occur during these meetings often include agreements about feeding schedules and territorial use that minimize competitive pressure while maximizing benefits for both groups. Information about human activities increasingly features in interpod communications as shipping, fishing, and research activities expand throughout orca territories. The visiting pod brings reports of new shipping lanes that create acoustic interference, fishing operations that reduce prey availability, and research vessels that require behavioral adjustments to maintain family safety. This information sharing helps both families adapt to the rapidly changing ocean environment created by expanding human presence. The mating opportunities presented by interpod encounters require careful genetic assessment to ensure optimal offspring viability. Female orcas can evaluate potential mates through acoustic analysis, scent detection, and behavioral observation that reveals genetic compatibility and fitness indicators. The reproductive decisions made during these brief encounters will influence the genetic makeup of future generations, making mate selection one of the most critical aspects of interpod relationships. Conflict resolution mechanisms become essential when territorial disputes or resource competition creates tension between families. Orca society has evolved sophisticated methods for resolving conflicts without resorting to physical violence that could injure valuable family members. These mechanisms include acoustic threats, positioning displays, and ritualized competitions that establish dominance relationships while minimizing actual harm to participants. The gradual separation process requires as much diplomatic care as the initial approach, with both families ensuring that all social obligations have been fulfilled and future interaction agreements have been established. The acoustic exchanges that accompany departure carry information about intended territorial movements, seasonal migration timing, and the conditions under which future meetings might be welcome. These final communications create the foundation for ongoing relationships that may span decades of future encounters. Cultural transmission between pods introduces new hunting techniques, vocal patterns, and behavioral innovations that increase the adaptive capacity of both families. Young orcas exposed to different cultural practices during interpod encounters often incorporate these new elements into their own behavioral repertoires, creating cultural evolution that enhances species survival capability. This cultural exchange represents one of the most sophisticated examples of non-human knowledge transfer found in the natural world. Stormwall trial. The first signs of the approaching tempest reach our orca through subtle changes in atmospheric pressure that her sensitive lateral line system detects long before the storm becomes visible on the horizon. The barometric drop creates physical sensations in her massive bodya, tightening in her air-filled sinuses, a dull ache in her jaw joints, and most critically, changes in the behavior of the microscopic organisms that form the base of the ocean's food web. These tiny creatures, responding to pressure changes with vertical migrations that alter the acoustic properties of seawater, create the first warning of the meteorological chaos approaching from the northwest. The wind arrives before the waves, its surface effects initially creating only minor chop that barely registers on her consciousness after decades of experiencing Pacific storms. But her acoustic environment changes dramatically as wind-generated surface turbulence begins interfering with the long-range communication that holds her family together across miles of ocean. The matriarch's calls, normally crystal clear at distances exceeding 10 miles, begin showing the distortion and range reduction that signals deteriorating weather conditions requiring immediate tactical adjustments. Her family's response to the approaching storm follows protocols refined through countless encounters with Pacific tempests, their behavior shifting from the relaxed foraging mode of calm weather to the tight defensive formations necessary for surviving extreme conditions. The matriarch's position becomes even more central as family members close ranks around their leader, while the youngest calves move to the most protected positions within the group formation, where adult bodies can shield them from the worst effects of the approaching chaos. The waves begin building with the inexorable progression that marks truly dangerous storms, their height increasing from the normal 3-foot Pacific swells to the 8-foot monsters that make surface breathing challenging for even the largest orcas. Our orca must time her breathing with increasing precision, rising to the surface during the brief moments when wave troughs provide access to air, while avoiding the peaks that could slam her massive body with thousands of pounds of water pressure per square foot. Temperature changes accompany the storm's approach, as wind action brings cold water from the depths to the surface, while driving warmer surface water downward in chaotic mixing patterns that eliminate the stable thermal layers orcas use for navigation and hunting. The resulting temperature chaos interferes with her ability to read ocean conditions, while the mixing action disperses the chemical signatures that normally provide information about prey locations and current patterns essential for navigation. The acoustic landscape transforms into cacophony as wind-driven waves create underwater sound that drowns out the subtle acoustic cues her family depends on for coordination and hunting. Wave action against the surface generates broadband noise that masks echolocation returns, while the turbulent mixing creates acoustic shadows and reflections that could confuse navigation in critical moments when precise positioning means the difference between safety and disaster. Maintaining family cohesion becomes increasingly challenging, as wave action and current changes threaten to separate individuals from the protective group formation. The smallest calf, barely 6 months old and still learning to coordinate his breathing with surface conditions, begins showing signs of exhaustion as he struggles to maintain position against the increasing wave action. His distress calls, thin and high-pitched against the growing storm noise, trigger immediate protective responses from every adult in the family. Our orca immediately moves to assist the struggling calf, positioning her massive body to create a wind shadow that reduces the wave action in his immediate vicinity. This protective positioning requires her to work harder against the storm conditions while reducing her own safety margin, but the protective instincts that drive orca family behavior leave no room for hesitation when young lives are at stake. Her sister joins the rescue effort, the two adults creating a living breakwater that allows the calf to rest and recover his strength. The storm's full fury arrives with startling suddenness as wind speeds increase from manageable 20-knot breezes to 40-knot gales that create confused seas with waves approaching from multiple directions simultaneously. These chaotic wave patterns create underwater turbulence that extends far below the surface, generating powerful currents and pressure waves that could separate family members or drive them into dangerous proximity with underwater obstacles. Navigation becomes critical as the storm's progression threatens to drive the family toward the rocky coastline, where shallow water and breaking waves create deadly conditions for large marine mammals. The matriarch's knowledge of local bathymetry and current patterns becomes essential for plotting an escape route that leads to deeper, safer waters where the family can ride out the storm without risk of being driven ashore by wind and wave action. The calf's condition deteriorates despite the protection provided by the adult females, his exhausted breathing becoming irregular as hypothermia begins affecting his motor control and cognitive function. The decision to initiate emergency rescue protocols cannot be delayed further, requiring coordinated action from multiple family members to ensure the youngest member's survival. The matriarch's emergency calls cut through the storm noise with the authority of absolute command, triggering immediate response from every available adult. Physical rescue techniques for distressed calves require precise coordination under the most challenging conditions imaginable. Our orca and her sister position themselves on either side of the exhausted youngster, using their bodies to create a stable platform that supports his weight while maintaining forward progress towards safer waters. This formation, known as infant carrying, represents one of the most sophisticated rescue behaviors found in the animal kingdom, requiring perfect timing and communication between participants. The rescue formation must maintain forward progress against storm conditions while providing life support for the endangered calf, whose survival depends entirely on the endurance and skill of his adult protectors. The two females supporting him must coordinate their breathing, diving, and swimming to create a stable environment that allows him to rest while the family group moves towards safety. Any failure in coordination could result in the calf being dropped or injured by the powerful currents and wave action. Emergency navigation under storm conditions requires the matriarch to access navigational knowledge accumulated over 6 decades of Pacific residence, her memory providing crucial information about underwater topography, current patterns, and safe refuge areas that might provide shelter from the worst storm effects. Her acoustic navigation systems, compromised by storm noise, must be supplemented by magnetic field detection and the subtle pressure cues that indicate proximity to underwater terrain features. The family's survival depends on reaching deeper waters where storm effects diminish with depth, but the calf's condition prevents the rapid diving that would normally allow escape from surface turbulence. The rescue formation must remain near the surface to ensure the exhausted youngster maintains access to breathing opportunities, forcing the entire family to endure the full brunt of storm conditions until they reach the safety of deeper oceanic waters. Relief comes gradually as the family moves beyond the storm's most dangerous effects and reaches waters deep enough to provide refuge from the worst surface conditions. The calf, supported throughout the crisis by his adult relatives, shows signs of recovery as calmer conditions allow him to breathe normally and begin generating the body heat necessary to combat hypothermia. The family's coordinated response has prevented tragedy, demonstrating the sophisticated social behaviors that allow orca families to survive the ocean's most challenging conditions. Shadow of humans. The rhythmic thrum of diesel engines reaches our orca's sensitive hearing long before the research vessel becomes visible through the dark Pacific waters. Its mechanical heartbeat, creating an acoustic signature distinctly different from the biological sounds that normally populate her oceanic world. This intrusion of human technology into her domain triggers a complex mixture of curiosity and caution that reflects decades of evolving relationships between her species and the increasingly technological human civilization that shares the ocean's resources. The boat approaches with the deliberate movements characteristic of research vessels rather than the purposeful speed of commercial fishing boats or the random patterns of recreational craft. Her acoustic analysis reveals multiple human voices, the distinctive whir of electronic equipment, and most tellingly, the specific engine modifications that mark this as a scientific vessel rather than a commercial operation. These audio signatures trigger memories of previous encounters with researchers' mostly neutral experiences that ended without incident, but requiring constant vigilance nonetheless. Her family's response follows established protocols for human encounters that balance natural curiosity about these strange surface-dwelling creatures with appropriate caution regarding their potentially dangerous technology. The matriarch maintains her position at the center of the group, while adult females move to shield the youngest calves from direct exposure to human observation. This protective formation allows scientific observation while ensuring that family safety remains the primary consideration. The researcher's equipment generates electromagnetic signatures that interfere with her magnetic navigation system, creating subtle disorientation that forces her to rely more heavily on acoustic and visual navigation cues. The underwater cameras trail their distinctive electrical fields, while hydrophones designed to record whale vocalizations create acoustic interference that could mask important environmental sounds. These technological intrusions represent growing challenges as human research activities expand throughout orca territories. Behavioral changes ripple through the family as human presence modifies their normal activity patterns in ways both subtle and profound. Hunting activities cease immediately, as the noise and visual disturbance created by the research vessel would alert prey species to predator presence while reducing hunting efficiency to unacceptable levels. Social activities become more subdued, with family members maintaining closer than normal proximity while monitoring human activities for signs of threat. The scientists' attempts to record family vocalizations create feedback loops that complicate normal orca communication patterns. Family members must adjust their call frequencies and timing to account for the acoustic interference created by recording equipment, while the knowledge that their communications are being monitored introduces subtle behavioral modifications that could affect the validity of research data being collected. Curiosity about human technology draws some family members closer to the vessel despite general caution about unknown threats. Younger animals, less experienced with human encounters, show particular interest in the strange shapes and sounds emanating from the research platform. Their inquisitive approaches require careful supervision by adult family members who understand both the educational value of human observation and the potential dangers of close contact with technology. The electromagnetic fields generated by the vessel's electronic systems create sensory confusion that affects her ability to detect the bioelectric signatures normally used for prey location and environmental navigation. Fish swimming near the research vessel essentially disappear from her electrical detection system, while the boat's powerful generators create electromagnetic noise that masks the subtle electrical patterns she uses for fine-scale navigation and prey assessment. Stress indicators begin appearing in family behavior patterns as the prolonged human presence disrupts normal daily rhythms and activity cycles. Heart rates increase among family members despite the absence of obvious threats, while stress-related vocalizations appear in their communication pattern. These physiological responses to human presence demonstrate the significant impact that seemingly benign research activities can have on orca behavior and welfare. The research vessel's positioning creates territorial complications as its presence effectively claims exclusive use of prime hunting grounds that the family would normally exploit during this time period. Commercial fish populations that concentrate around the vessel's hull provide feeding opportunities that become inaccessible due to human presence, forcing the family to expend additional energy traveling to alternative hunting areas that may offer inferior prey densities. Adaptation strategies emerge as the family develops short-term behavioral modifications to minimize the impact of human presence while maintaining essential life functions. Communication shifts to lower frequencies that penetrate through research vessel noise more effectively, while swimming patterns adjust to maintain safe distances from the vessel while preventing family dispersal that could compromise group coordination and safety. The broader context of increasing human ocean presence weighs heavily on the family's behavioral calculations. This research vessel represents just one example of expanding human activities that include commercial shipping, fishing operations, military exercises, and recreational boating that collectively create an acoustic environment increasingly dominated by artificial sounds rather than natural ocean rhythms. Long-range acoustic communication becomes particularly challenging as shipping lane noise from distant commercial vessels adds background interference that reduces the effective range of family vocalizations. The matriarch's contact calls, normally effective over distances exceeding 20 miles, may carry only half that distance through the acoustic clutter created by human industrial activities spread across thousands of square miles of ocean. Educational opportunities emerge from human encounters, as younger family members observe and learn appropriate responses to technological intrusions that will likely become more frequent throughout their lifetimes. The matriarch's calm but vigilant response to human presence provides behavioral models that help prepare the next generation for an ocean environment increasingly influenced by human activities. The research vessel's departure provides immediate relief from acoustic interference and electromagnetic disruption, but the family's behavioral patterns require time to return to normal pre-encounter states. Stress-related physiological changes persist for hours after human contact ends, while heightened vigilance behaviors continue as family members scan for additional human activities that might require further behavioral modifications. Commercial shipping noise becomes audible on the horizon as a massive container vessel follows shipping lanes established to maximize efficiency while minimizing environmental impact. The low-frequency rumble of its enormous engines will affect orca communication patterns for hours as the vessel passes through their territory, creating acoustic interference that demonstrates the cumulative impact of multiple human activities on marine mammal behavior and welfare. The family's adaptation to increasing human presence represents an ongoing evolutionary challenge that requires behavioral flexibility and cultural learning to navigate successfully. Their ability to maintain essential life functions while adapting to technological intrusions will determine their long-term survival in an ocean environment increasingly shaped by human activities and priorities. Ice flow ambush. The Antarctic waters stretch endlessly in all directions, their surface decorated with ice formations that create a landscape unlike anything found in the temperate Pacific where our orca spent her early years. These southern hunting grounds represent the ultimate test of orca intelligence and cooperation, where prey species have evolved sophisticated survival strategies that require equally sophisticated predation techniques to overcome. The leopard seal, resting on the small ice floe ahead, has chosen what appears to be the perfect refuge surrounded by frigid water that would quickly incapacitate most predators, positioned on ice too small for terrestrial hunters to access. Her family approaches the ice field with the coordinated precision that marks them as one of the most intelligent predator teams on Earth. The hunt they are about to demonstrate represents the pinnacle of cooperative behavior in the animal kingdom, requiring split-second timing, perfect communication, and the kind of innovative problem-solving that separates orcas from every other marine predator. The technique they will employ took generations to develop and requires transmission of cultural knowledge so complex that only a few orca populations worldwide have mastered its execution. The leopard seal's position appears impregnable to conventional hunting approaches. At nearly half a ton, and armed with teeth designed for dismembering penguin and seal prey, leopard seals rank among Antarctica's apex predators when fighting in their preferred aquatic environment. But their reliance on ice floes for resting creates a vulnerability that orcas have learned to exploit through a hunting technique that transforms the seal's refuge into a trap. Acoustic reconnaissance begins as family members spread out around the ice floe to analyze its structure, thickness, and stability characteristics through echolocation. The returning sound waves provide detailed information about ice density, underwater shape, and most critically, the structural weak points where applied force could compromise the flow's integrity. This acoustic analysis requires interpretation skills developed through years of ice hunting experience. Reading ice formations like terrestrial predators might read terrain features. Water depth beneath the ice floe becomes a crucial tactical consideration, as the wave-making technique requires sufficient underwater space for the coordinated swimming patterns that generate the forces necessary to displace ice formations. The family's sonar reveals a depth of approximately 40 feet beneath the target, flow adequate for the swimming maneuvers they have planned, but requiring precise depth control to generate maximum wave energy while avoiding collision with the ice's underwater extensions. The matriarch's positioning signals initiate the coordinated approach sequence that will determine the hunt's success or failure. Her massive 6-ton body moves to a position precisely calculated to create the optimal wave angle when she surfaces, while other family members space themselves at intervals that will reinforce her initial wave with secondary surge patterns. This formation requires mathematical precision that would challenge human engineers, yet the family achieves it through instinctive understanding developed over decades of cooperative hunting. Environmental factors must be assessed and incorporated into the attack plan, as wind direction, current patterns, and ice field dynamics will all influence the effectiveness of wave generation techniques. A slight breeze could push the ice floe away from the waves, while current patterns might disperse wave energy before it reaches maximum effectiveness. The family's leader evaluates these variables with the expertise of a tactical commander planning a complex military operation. The leopard seal's behavior indicates awareness that something unusual is occurring in its environment, but its evolutionary programming provides no defense against the innovative hunting strategy about to be employed. Leopard seals have survived for millions of years by avoiding aquatic predators and using ice as refuge, but they have no behavioral adaptations for dealing with predators capable of manipulating their ice refuge itself. Coordination signals pass between family members through vocalizations too subtle for human detection, confirming readiness and synchronizing the timing that will make the difference between success and failure. Each orca must know precisely when to begin her approach run, what depth to maintain, and exactly when to surface to create the wave pattern that will remove the seal from its apparently secure position. The approach run begins with deceptive casualness, as family members start their coordinated swimming patterns at distances that seem too far from the target to pose any immediate threat. This initial phase serves multiple purposes, building the swimming speed necessary for wave generation while avoiding premature alarm responses from the target that could trigger escape behaviors before the trap becomes inescapable. Hydrodynamic calculations unfold in real time as the attacking orcas adjust their swimming depth, speed, and angle to create the precise wave conditions required for ice flow displacement. The lead orca must generate initial wave energy sufficient to destabilize the ice, while following family members must time their waves to reinforce rather than cancel the effects of previous waves. This level of coordination requires cognitive abilities that rival those of human engineering teams. The first wave strikes the ice floe with carefully calculated force, its energy transmitted through the ice structure to create instability without immediately displacing the seal into the water where it might escape. This initial destabilization serves as setup for the coordinated wave sequence that will follow, preparing the target for the decisive displacement that makes capture possible. Secondary waves arrive in precisely timed succession, each one building on the instability created by previous impacts until the ice floe's stability passes the tipping point, where physics makes displacement inevitable. The mathematics of wave interaction create amplification effects that multiply the force applied to the ice structure, generating displacement energy far beyond what any individual orca could produce through simple physical force. The leopard seal's desperate attempts to maintain position on the increasingly unstable ice demonstrate the effectiveness of the orca's strategy while highlighting the sophisticated nature of this hunting technique. Unlike simple chase predation that relies on speed and endurance, wave hunting requires the prey to be displaced from a position of safety into an environment where the predators hold overwhelming advantage. Success occurs with explosive suddenness, as the final coordinated wave overwhelms the ice floe's stability and launches the leopard seal into the water, where its natural advantages become liabilities against coordinated orca attack. The precision required to achieve this result, timing, positioning, wave generation, and coordinated attack, represents one of the most sophisticated hunting behaviors found anywhere in the natural world. The capture phase demonstrates why orcas are considered the ultimate marine predators, as family members coordinate to prevent the leopard seal's escape while sharing the substantial nutritional benefits of their successful hunt. The cultural knowledge required to execute this hunting technique will be passed to the next generation through careful instruction, ensuring that this remarkable adaptation continues to provide hunting success for future family generations. Migration memory. The pull begins as something deeper than conscious thought, an ancient imperative encoded in neural pathways that stretch back through millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Our orca feels the stirring of migration instinct as environmental cues align to trigger the massive journey that will carry her family across nearly 1,000 miles of Pacific Ocean to reach the warming waters where they will spend the plaint. Winter months. This internal compass operates through mechanisms so sophisticated that human science has only recently begun to understand the multiple navigation systems that guide one of the most precise animal migrations on Earth. The Earth's magnetic field provides the primary navigation framework for her journey. Its invisible lines of force, detected through specialized cells in her brain that contain magnetite crystals sensitive to magnetic variations. These biological compass readings allow her to determine cardinal directions with remarkable precision while also providing information about her position relative to the magnetic anomalies created by underwater mountain ranges, deep ocean trenches, and the mineral compositions of distant continental margins. Her genetic memory carries the encoded routes followed by countless generations of her ancestors, creating a cognitive map that spans the entire North Pacific Basin with landmark precision that would impress human navigators. This inherited knowledge includes not just direction and distance information, but detailed data about seasonal current patterns, temperature variations, food availability, and the countless environmental factors that determine successful migration timing and route selection. Chemical signatures in the water provide a secondary navigation system that supplements magnetic field detection with information about current systems, water mass origins, and the biological productivity of different ocean regions. Her sophisticated palette can detect trace compounds that identify specific water masses, allowing her to follow current systems like underwater highways, while avoiding areas where chemical compositions indicate poor feeding conditions or environmental hazards. The decision to begin migration involves complex calculations that balance current food availability against the energetic costs of long-distance travel and the benefits of reaching wintering grounds before optimal conditions deteriorate. Her family's current nutritional status, the age and condition of family members, and environmental indicators about changing seasons all factor into timing decisions that could determine survival success for the entire group. Star patterns provide additional navigational reference points during surface travel, as her vision includes sensitivity to polarized light patterns that reveal sun position even through heavy cloud cover. The North Pacific's seasonal weather patterns create consistent relationships between celestial cues and magnetic field readings that allow cross-checking of navigation data to maintain course accuracy across thousands of miles of featureless ocean. Ocean floor topography, mapped through decades of acoustic exploration, creates three-dimensional mental charts that guide deep-water navigation through undersea mountain ranges and abyssal plains. Her echolocation can detect bottom features from remarkable distances, while the acoustic properties of different sediment types provide information about geographic location and proximity to major geological features that serve as navigation landmarks. Temperature gradients in the water column create thermal highways that her family follows during migration, exploiting current systems and thermal boundaries that reduce swimming effort while maintaining optimal speeds for efficient travel. These temperature differences also support different biological communities that provide feeding opportunities during the journey, allowing the family to supplement their nutrition without major deviations from their optimal route. Acoustic landmarks scattered throughout the ocean provide navigation reference points through the distinctive sound signatures of different geographic regions. Underwater volcanoes create specific acoustic environments, while the interaction of currents with seamounts generates characteristic sound patterns that persist across seasons. Her memory includes hundreds of these acoustic landmarks that allow precise position determination throughout the migration route. The family's formation during migration optimizes both navigation accuracy and energy efficiency, with experienced adults taking turns in the lead position where navigation demands are highest, while younger animals travel in positions that reduce swimming effort through drafting effects. This cooperative arrangement ensures that navigation responsibilities are shared while maintaining the group cohesion, essential for family safety during long-distance travel. Weather pattern recognition allows the family to time their migration to take advantage of favorable conditions while avoiding storm systems that could interfere with navigation or create dangerous traveling conditions. Her memory includes detailed knowledge of seasonal weather patterns, storm frequencies, and the atmospheric conditions that create optimal migration windows for efficient travel. Biological cues from other migrating species provide additional information about seasonal timing and environmental conditions, as different species' migration schedules reflect their specific environmental requirements and sensitivities. The presence or absence of other migrating animals offers confirmation of seasonal progression and environmental suitability for travel. Navigation error correction mechanisms allow the family to adjust their route when environmental conditions or navigation uncertainties create deviations from optimal pathways. The multiple navigation systems provide redundant information that can compensate for temporary disruption of any single guidance mechanism, while frequent position checks against known landmarks allow course corrections before minor errors become major navigation problems. Cultural transmission of migration knowledge ensures that younger family members learn the complex skills necessary for independent navigation during future migrations. The matriarch's teaching includes not just route information but the subtle environmental interpretation skills that allow navigation decisions to adapt to changing conditions while maintaining overall migration success. Social coordination during migration maintains family unity across distances that could easily separate individual animals, with communication systems adapted for long-distance travel and the acoustic challenges created by diverse ocean environments. The family's movement as a cohesive unit provides safety advantages while ensuring that navigation, knowledge, and experience are shared among all group members. Memory consolidation during migration strengthens the neural pathways that encode route information environmental cues, and navigation techniques, creating increasingly sophisticated internal maps that improve with each successful journey. This cognitive enhancement ensures that her navigation abilities continue developing throughout her lifetime, building expertise that will guide her family through decades of future migrations. The approach to wintering grounds brings distinctive environmental signatures that confirm successful navigation and trigger the behavioral changes necessary for adaptation to their seasonal destination. Recognition of these familiar cues validates the accuracy of her complex navigation systems while initiating the physiological and behavioral adjustments that will optimize her family's success in their winter habitat. Resident versus transient. Picture this. You're an orca cruising through the cold waters off the Pacific Northwest, and suddenly your sonar picks up something that makes your blood run cold. Not a predator, you're the apex here, but something far more socially awkward. Another orca family. The wrong kind of orca family. Welcome to one of nature's most fascinating cultural divides, where being the same species means absolutely nothing if you don't speak the right language or eat the right food. In the orca world, there are essentially two completely different civilizations sharing the same ocean, and they've spent thousands of years perfecting the art of pretending the other doesn't exist. Meet the residents first, the chatty, fish-obsessed homebodies of the orca world. These are your salmon specialists, the ones who've built their entire culture around following the fish runs up and down the coast. They live in tight-knit family groups called pods, usually led by the oldest female, who's basically the grandmother everyone actually listens to. These matriarchs can live past 90, accumulating decades of knowledge about where to find the best salmon, which routes to take, and most importantly, how to talk. And boy, do residents love to talk. Their underwater conversations are constant clicks, whistles, calls that carry for miles through the ocean. Each family has its own dialect, passed down from mother to calf like a secret code. Scientists can actually identify which pod an orca belongs to just by listening to their calls. It's like having a regional accent, except your accent determines whether you get invited to the family barbecue or completely shunned from society. Residents are the extroverts of the orca world. When they're hunting salmon, it sounds like an underwater block party. They coordinate their movements with constant chatter, share information about fish locations, and celebrate successful catches with what can only be described as victory calls. Imagine a group of friends at a restaurant, loudly discussing the menu, calling over to other tables, and generally making their presence known to everyone within earshot. That's resident orcas on a typical Tuesday. Now enter the transients, the strong, silent types who've built their reputation on being the ocean's most efficient killing machines. These orcas hunt marine mammals, seals, sea lions, dolphins, and even other whales. They're the apex predators, and they've developed a hunting culture based on stealth, patience, and the kind of silence that would make a ninja jealous. Transient orcas operate like underwater special forces. When they're hunting, they go completely radio silent. No calls, no clicks, no social chatter whatsoever. They communicate through subtle body language and coordinated movements that require years of practice to perfect. It's the difference between a boisterous family dinner and a carefully orchestrated heist, both effective, but for completely different purposes. The reason for this silence becomes obvious when you consider their prey. Fish are deaf to the high-frequency calls that orcas use, so residents can chatter away without spooking their salmon dinner. But marine mammals? They have excellent hearing and a strong survival instinct. One misplaced call from a transient orca and their potential meal disappears into the depths, taking hours of careful stalking with it. This fundamental difference in hunting strategy has shaped everything about how these two orca cultures operate. Residents travel in large, noisy family groups because salmon schooling behavior makes group hunting effective. Transients travel in smaller, quieter units because too many hunters spoil the stealth approach. Residents have complex vocal traditions because communication enhances their fishing success. Transients have developed sophisticated silent communication because sound equals starvation. But here's where it gets really interesting. These two orca cultures actively avoid each other, despite living in the same waters and sometimes crossing paths. When residents encounter transients, Both groups engage in what scientists politely call avoidance behavior. In reality, it looks more like two groups of teenagers from rival schools accidentally meeting at the mallotes of posturing, careful distance maintenance, and studied indifference. The residents seem particularly nervous around transients, and who can blame them? Transients are specialized killers who hunt marine mammals for a living. While attacks on other orcas are extremely rare, the residents apparently aren't taking any chances. They'll alter their travel routes, change their calling patterns, and generally behave like they're in the presence of ocean royalty they don't want to offend. Transients, for their part, seem largely indifferent to residents, the kind of cool dismissal that suggests they consider fish-eaters beneath their notice. They'll continue their hunting patterns with minimal acknowledgement of the residents' presence, like apex predators who can't be bothered with the concerns of lesser beings. This avoidance ritual extends beyond simple encounters. The two groups have completely different seasonal patterns, different preferred habitats within the same regions, and different social structures. Residents form massive superpods during salmon runs, gathering in groups of 50 or more individuals for what amounts to an underwater family reunion. Transients never gather in such numbers, preferring their small, efficient hunting units. Even their physical appearances tell the story of their cultural divide. Residents tend to have more curved dorsal fins and lighter coloration patterns. Transients are often larger and more robust, with straighter dorsal fins and darker coloration, the physical manifestation of a lifestyle built around taking down large, dangerous prey. Scientists studying these populations have discovered that the cultural divide runs so deep that residents and transients are actually genetically distinct, despite being the same species. Thousands of years of cultural separation have led to biological separation, creating two populations that are as different as urban and rural communities, except with life or death consequences for getting the cultural cues wrong. This cultural divide represents one of the most sophisticated examples of niche partitioning in the natural world. Two apex predators, sharing the same habitat by developing completely different lifestyles, communication systems, and social structures. It's like watching human civilization split into two distinct cultures based entirely on career choice, except the stakes are survival, and the classroom is the entire Pacific Ocean. Breach, display. There's a moment just before an orca breaches when the ocean holds its breath. The water goes still, the surface tension builds, and then explosion. 6 tons of pure muscle and blubber rockets skyward in a display of power that defies every law of physics you thought you understood. This isn't just showing off, though it certainly looks like it. This is communication, celebration, and possibly pure joy wrapped up in one magnificent package that can be seen from miles away. When an orca decides to breach, it's not a casual decision. These marine giants need to build up serious momentum to launch their entire body clear of the water's surface. They dive deep, sometimes 30 feet or more, then angle upward at precisely the right trajectory while pumping their massive tail flukes with the kind of coordinated power that would make Olympic swimmers weep. The physics alone is staggering. Imagine trying to throw a small car straight up into the air using nothing but core strength and perfect timing. The breach itself is a thing of beauty and terror. The orca's head breaks the surface first, water cascading off its distinctive black and white pattern, followed by the full length of its torpedo-shaped body. For a brief, impossible moment, this creature of the deep becomes a creature of the air, suspended against the sky like some ancient sea god showing off for mortals. Then gravity remembers its job, and 20 feet of apex predator comes crashing back down with the kind of splash that can be heard underwater for miles. But breaching is just one item on the orca's repertoire of surface theatrics. There's also tail lobbing, where they stick their rear ends up in the air and bring their flukes down on the water's surface with the force of a thunderclap. Picture the world's largest beaver slapping its tail, if that beaver happened to be a highly intelligent marine predator with attitude. The sound carries incredible distances underwater, making it perfect for long-range communication or simply announcing their presence to anyone within a 10-mile radius. Then there's spy hopping, perhaps the most endearingly curious behavior in the orca playbook. The whale positions itself vertically in the water and slowly rises until its head and eyes clear the surface, looking around like a submarine periscope operated by someone genuinely interested in the world above water. They can hold this position for surprisingly long periods, rotating slowly to take in a full 360-degree view of their surroundings. It's the oceanic equivalent of standing on your tiptoes to see over a crowd, except the crowd is the entire Pacific Ocean, and you're a several-ton marine mammal with excellent eyesight. Scientists have proposed various theories for why orcas engage in these energetically expensive surface behaviors, and like most questions about orca behavior, the answers are probably more complex than we initially assumed. The communication theory makes solid sense as sound travels incredibly well through water, and a breach or tail lob creates an acoustic signature that can be detected by other orcas dozens of miles away. In the vast emptiness of the open ocean, being able to say, "Hey, we're over here," in a way that carries maximum distance could mean the difference between finding your family and spending days searching empty water. The parasite removal theory is equally practical. Orcas, like all marine mammals, deal with various hitchhiker's barnacles, whale lice, and other organisms that attach themselves to skin and cause irritation. The tremendous force of hitting the water after a breach could help knock these unwanted passengers loose, making breaching a form of extreme exfoliation. It's like going to the spa, if the spa involved hurling yourself 30 feet through the air and trusting physics to handle the rest. But then there's the joy theory, and this is where orca behavior gets really interesting from a human perspective. Breaching often occurs in social situations during play sessions, family reunions, or moments of apparent celebration. Young orcas seem to breach more frequently than adults, much like human children who can't sit still when they're excited. Adult orcas have been observed breaching repeatedly during successful hunts or when reuniting with pod members after separation. The infectious nature of breaching suggests there might be an emotional component that science struggles to quantify. One orca breaches, and suddenly half the pod is launching themselves skyward in what looks suspiciously like a celebration. It's the marine equivalent of that moment at a concert when one person starts clapping and suddenly the entire audience is on their feet. Except the audience is a family of apex predators, and the applause involves several tons of whale hitting the water at terminal velocity. Spy hopping serves additional functions beyond simple curiosity. Orcas have excellent vision both above and below water, and spy hopping allows them to get a visual perspective on their environment that echolocation can't provide. They might be checking weather conditions, looking for bird activity that indicates fish schools, or simply satisfying the kind of intellectual curiosity that comes with being one of the ocean's most intelligent residents. Some researchers believe spy hopping helps orcas orient themselves using landmarks, essentially using their heads as organic GPS units. The timing of these surface behaviors often correlates with specific activities or social situations. Breaching frequently occurs when pods meet after separation, suggesting it serves as a greeting ritual or reunion celebration. Tail lobbing often accompanies hunting activities, possibly serving to stun prey or coordinate group hunting efforts. Spy hopping increases in frequency near coastlines or in areas with heavy boat traffic, suggesting orcas are actively monitoring their above-water environment for potential threats or opportunities. What makes orca surface behavior particularly fascinating is its apparent variability between different populations and cultures. Some orca communities are frequent breachers, incorporating aerial displays into their regular social routines. Others seem more reserved, using surface behaviors sparingly and for specific purposes. It's like studying different human cultures and discovering that some societies are naturally more expressive, while others prefer subtle communication, except the expression involves launching several tons of marine predator into air. The energy expenditure involved in breaching is considerable, which makes the behavior even more intriguing. An orca that breaches repeatedly is burning calories that could otherwise be used for hunting, traveling, or other survival activities. The fact that they choose to spend this energy on what often appears to be social or playful behavior suggests that surface displays serve important functions in orca society, functions important enough to justify the metabolic cost. Recent observations have documented orcas breaching in coordination, with multiple individuals launching themselves skyward in sequence, creating an underwater choreography that's both beautiful and mysterious. These synchronized displays suggest a level of communication and coordination that goes beyond simple individual expression, hinting at complex social dynamics that researchers are still working to understand. Breach, display. There's a moment just before an orca breaches when the ocean holds its breath. The water goes still, the surface tension builds, and thin explosion. 6 tons of pure muscle and blubber rockets skyward in a display of power that defies every law of physics you thought you understood. This isn't just showing off, though it certainly looks like it. This is communication, celebration, and possibly pure joy wrapped up in one magnificent package that can be seen from miles away. When an orca decides to breach, it's not a casual decision. These marine giants need to build up serious momentum to launch their entire body clear of the water's surface. They dive deep, sometimes 30 feet or more, then angle upward at precisely the right trajectory while pumping their massive tail flukes with the kind of coordinated power that would make Olympic swimmers weep. The physics alone is staggering. Imagine trying to throw a small car straight up into the air using nothing but core strength and perfect timing. The breach itself is a thing of beauty and terror. The orca's head breaks the surface first, water cascading off its distinctive black and white pattern, followed by the full length of its torpedo-shaped body. For a brief, impossible moment, this creature of the deep becomes a creature of the air, suspended against the sky like some ancient sea god showing off for mortals. Then gravity remembers its job, and 20 feet of apex predator comes crashing back down with the kind of splash that can be heard underwater for miles. But breaching is just one item on the orca's repertoire of surface theatrics. There's also tail lobbing, where they stick their rear ends up in the air and bring their flukes down on the water's surface with the force of a thunderclap. Picture the world's largest beaver slapping its tail, if that beaver happened to be a highly intelligent marine predator with attitude. The sound carries incredible distances underwater, making it perfect for long-range communication or simply announcing their presence to anyone within a 10-mile radius. Then there's spy hopping, perhaps the most endearingly curious behavior in the orca playbook. The whale positions itself vertically in the water and slowly rises until its head and eyes clear the surface, looking around like a submarine periscope operated by someone genuinely interested in the world above water. They can hold this position for surprisingly long periods, rotating slowly to take in a full 360-degree view of their surroundings. It's the oceanic equivalent of standing on your tiptoes to see over a crowd, except the crowd is the entire Pacific Ocean, and you're a several-ton marine mammal with excellent eyesight. Scientists have proposed various theories for why orcas engage in these energetically expensive surface behaviors, and like most questions about orca behavior, the answers are probably more complex than we initially assumed. The communication theory makes solid sense as sound travels incredibly well through water, and a breach or tail lob creates an acoustic signature that can be detected by other orcas dozens of miles away. In the vast emptiness of the open ocean, being able to say, "Hey, we're over here," in a way that carries maximum distance could mean the difference between finding your family and spending days searching empty water. The parasite removal theory is equally practical. Orcas, like all marine mammals, deal with various hitchhiker's barnacles, whale lice, and other organisms that attach themselves to skin and cause irritation. The tremendous force of hitting the water after a breach could help knock these unwanted passengers loose, making breaching a form of extreme exfoliation. It's like going to the spa, if the spa involved hurling yourself 30 feet through the air and trusting physics to handle the rest. But then there's the joy theory, and this is where orca behavior gets really interesting from a human perspective. Breaching often occurs in social situations during play sessions, family reunions, or moments of apparent celebration. Young orcas seem to breach more frequently than adults, much like human children who can't sit still when they're excited. Adult orcas have been observed breaching repeatedly during successful hunts or when reuniting with pod members after separation. The infectious nature of breaching suggests there might be an emotional component that science struggles to quantify. One orca breaches, and suddenly half the pod is launching themselves skyward in what looks suspiciously like a celebration. It's the marine equivalent of that moment at a concert, when one person starts clapping and suddenly the entire audience is on their feet. except the audience is a family of apex predators, and the applause involves several tons of whale hitting the water at terminal velocity. Spy hopping serves additional functions beyond simple curiosity. Orcas have excellent vision both above and below water, and spy hopping allows them to get a visual perspective on their environment that echolocation can't provide. They might be checking weather conditions, looking for bird activity that indicates fish schools, or simply satisfying the kind of intellectual curiosity that comes with being one of the ocean's most intelligent residents. Some researchers believe spy hopping helps orcas orient themselves using landmarks, essentially using their heads as organic GPS units. The timing of these surface behaviors often correlates with specific activities or social situations. Breaching frequently occurs when pods meet after separation, suggesting it serves as a greeting ritual or reunion celebration. Tail lobbing often accompanies hunting activities, possibly serving to stun prey or coordinate group hunting efforts. Spy hopping increases in frequency near coastlines or in areas with heavy boat traffic, suggesting orcas are actively monitoring their above-water environment for potential threats or opportunities. What makes orca surface behavior particularly fascinating is its apparent variability between different populations and cultures. Some orca communities are frequent breachers, incorporating aerial displays into their regular social routines. Others seem more reserved, using surface behaviors sparingly and for specific purposes. It's like studying different human cultures and discovering that some societies are naturally more expressive, while others prefer subtle communication, except the expression involves launching several tons of marine predator into air. The energy expenditure involved in breaching is considerable, which makes the behavior even more intriguing. An orca that breaches repeatedly is burning calories that could otherwise be used for hunting, traveling, or other survival activities. The fact that they choose to spend this energy on what often appears to be social or playful behavior suggests that surface displays serve important functions in orca society, functions important enough to justify the metabolic cost. Recent observations have documented orcas breaching in coordination, with multiple individuals launching themselves skyward in sequence, creating an underwater choreography that's both beautiful and mysterious. These synchronized displays suggest a level of communication and coordination that goes beyond simple individual expression, hinting at complex social dynamics that researchers are still working to understand. Hidden threats. The ocean looks pristine from the surface, but beneath the waves lurks an invisible enemy that's been building strength for decades. It doesn't have teeth or claws, can't be fought or fled from, and accumulates silently in the bodies of apex predators until it reaches levels that would make a toxicologist lose sleep. Welcome to the chemical shadow that follows every orca through modern seas, a cocktail of industrial pollutants, pesticides, and synthetic compounds that have turned the ocean's top predators into unwilling chemical storage units. Orcas occupy the worst possible position in this toxic lottery, the very top of the food web. Every fish they eat has accumulated chemicals from smaller fish, which got them from plankton, which absorbed them from seawater contaminated by decades of human industrial activity. It's a process called bioaccumulation, and it works like compound interest, except instead of earning money, you're earning a concentrated dose of every chemical humans have ever dumped into the ocean. The numbers are staggering. Orca blubber samples from the Pacific Northwest contain PCB concentrations hundreds of times higher than what's considered safe for marine mammals. These persistent organic pollutants were banned decades ago, but they don't break down naturally. They just keep circulating through the ecosystem, moving from prey to predator to apex predator, becoming more concentrated at each level, until orcas are swimming around with toxic loads that would qualify as hazardous waste if they were found on land. PCBs aren't the only villains in this chemical thriller. There are PBDEs from flame retardants, organochlorines from pesticides, heavy metals from industrial processes, and a growing list of emerging contaminants that includes everything from pharmaceuticals to microplastics. Each compound has its own way of interfering with biological processes, but they all share one characteristic. They love fat tissue, and orcas are basically swimming libraries of accumulated oceanic toxins. The physiological impacts of this chemical burden are becoming clearer as researchers develop new ways to study wild orca populations. The endocrine system, the network of hormones that controls everything from reproduction to immune function, seems particularly vulnerable. Female orcas with high pollutant loads show reduced fertility rates, longer intervals between calves, and higher rates of pregnancy failure. It's like their bodies are too busy dealing with chemical stress to focus on the basic biological imperative of reproduction. The immune system takes a hit too. Orcas with elevated contaminant levels show reduced resistance to diseases and infections that healthy populations would normally fight off without difficulty. Their white blood cell counts drop, their antibody responses weaken, and they become vulnerable to opportunistic pathogens that wouldn't normally pose a threat. It's the marine equivalent of having your immune system gradually worn down by constant exposure to low-level toxins. But perhaps the most insidious aspect of chemical contamination is how it affects the next generation. Mother orcas transfer a significant portion of their accumulated toxin load to their calves through milk, which is incredibly rich in fats where these chemicals preferentially accumulate. The firstborn calf gets the biggest dose, sometimes receiving 80% of the mother's lifetime chemical burden through nursing. It's a toxic inheritance that no parent would choose to give, but in the modern ocean, it's unavoidable. This chemical transfer means that young orcas start life already carrying a significant pollutant load, potentially affecting their development, immune function, and future reproductive success. Some researchers theorize that this early exposure might be contributing to the lower survival rates observed in certain orca populations, as calves struggle with immune systems compromised before they even learn to hunt independently. The geographic patterns of contamination tell their own disturbing story. Orcas living near heavily industrialized areas show higher pollutant levels than those in more remote regions, but even populations in the Arctic thousands of miles from major industrial centers carry detectable levels of synthetic chemicals. The ocean currents that have carried life-giving nutrients around the globe for millions of years now also carry the chemical signature of human industrial activity to every corner of the marine ecosystem. Adding insult to chemical injury, orcas also face another modern threat that attacks their most sophisticated sense: underwater noise pollution, particularly from military sonar systems. These high-intensity sound pulses can travel hundreds of miles through the ocean, creating an acoustic environment unlike anything orcas evolved to handle. Imagine trying to have a conversation while someone occasionally fires a cannon next to your ear, and you'll start to understand the acoustic chaos that modern orcas navigate daily. Military sonar operates at frequencies and intensities that can cause immediate physical damage to marine mammal hearing systems. Mass strandings of whales and dolphins have been documented following naval exercises, with necropsies revealing hemorrhaging around the ears and brain tissue damage consistent with acoustic trauma. It's the marine equivalent of being caught too close to an explosion, the kind of damage that can cause immediate disorientation, panic, and life-threatening behavioral changes. But even sublethal exposure to intense sonar can have profound impacts on orca behavior and physiology. These sounds can mask the echolocation calls that orcas use for navigation and hunting, essentially blinding them in their underwater world. Pod members can become separated when their communication calls are drowned out by sonar interference. Hunting success rates drop when prey detection becomes difficult or impossible. The physiological stress response to intense underwater noise is measurable and severe. Orcas exposed to naval sonar show elevated stress hormones, changes in diving behavior, and alterations in their normal activity patterns that can persist for days after the sound source has moved on. It's like being subjected to intermittent torture, unpredictable, unavoidable, and traumatic enough to alter fundamental behaviors. Ship traffic adds another layer of acoustic pollution that's more constant but equally problematic. The background noise levels in major shipping lanes have increased dramatically over the past century, creating a chronic acoustic fog that makes long-distance communication more difficult. Orcas have been observed changing their calling patterns in response to ship noise, essentially shouting to be heard over the mechanical din of global commerce. The cumulative impact of these multiple stressors, chemical contamination, acoustic pollution, and the various other pressures of sharing the ocean with human activities creates a perfect storm of physiological stress that researchers are only beginning to understand. Each threat alone might be manageable, but together they represent a fundamental alteration of the marine environment that challenges orcas' ability to maintain their sophisticated social structures and hunting traditions. Climate change adds yet another variable to this complex equation. As ocean temperatures rise and prey distributions shift, orcas must adapt their hunting strategies and migration patterns while simultaneously dealing with increasing chemical and acoustic stress. Some populations are already showing signs of strain, with declining birth rates, increased mortality, and behavioral changes that suggest these apex predators are being pushed toward the limits of their remarkable adaptability. The future remains uncertain, but the trajectory is clear. Every year brings new chemicals into the marine environment, new sources of acoustic disturbance, and new pressures from human activities that treat the ocean as both a resource and a dumping ground. For orcas, masters of an environment that has remained relatively stable for millions of years, the rapid pace of modern environmental change represents perhaps the greatest challenge their species has ever faced. Problem solver. In the cold waters off Argentina's Peninsula Valdez, marine biologists witnessed something that fundamentally changed how we think about whale intelligence. A young orca, barely old enough to hunt independently, was observed doing something no orca had ever been documented doing before. She invented a completely new hunting technique. Not learned it, not copied it from her mother, invented it from scratch, tested it, refined it, and then taught it to her family. Welcome to the workshop of Orca Innovation, where problem-solving meets cultural transmission in ways that make human technological development look remarkably familiar. The technique came to be known as seal flushing, and it's exactly as dramatic as it sounds. The young female orca discovered that she could position herself near the shoreline where elephant seals haul out to rest, then use powerful tail movements to create a surge of water that would wash over the beach and flush the seals back into the ocean. Once in the water, the seals became fair, game confused, disoriented, and suddenly in the domain of an apex predator who had just rewritten the rules of coastal hunting. But here's where the story gets really interesting. The first attempts were clumsy, inefficient affairs. The young orca would position herself too far from shore, or create waves that were too small to be effective, or time her approach poorly so that the seals had already moved to higher ground. She was essentially conducting trial-and-error experiments, adjusting variables and testing hypotheses like a marine biologist with fins and a remarkably sophisticated understanding of coastal hydrodynamics. Over the course of several months, researchers watched this orca refine her technique with the kind of methodical patience that would make an engineer proud. She learned the optimal distance from shore close enough to generate effective waves, far enough to avoid stranding herself in shallow water. She figured out the best tailbeat pattern to create the most powerful surge. She started timing her approaches to coincide with high seal activity periods, maximizing her chances of success. Most remarkably, she began to understand the behavioral patterns of her prey in ways that went far beyond simple predator-prey dynamics. She learned that seals resting closer to the water's edge were more vulnerable to flushing attempts. She discovered that creating multiple smaller waves was sometimes more effective than one large surge, as it prevented seals from simply riding out a single wave and returning to their comfortable positions. She was essentially developing a comprehensive understanding of seal psychology and coastal physics simultaneously. The innovation phase was impressive enough, but what happened next elevated this behavior from individual cleverness to cultural phenomenon. The young orca began teaching the technique to other members of her pod, starting with her immediate family. She would demonstrate the positioning, the tailbeat pattern, and the timing, then accompany younger relatives during their own attempts, providing what could only be described as coaching. The teaching process was remarkably sophisticated. The innovator would perform the technique slowly and deliberately when other orcas were watching, almost like a demonstration model in slow motion. She would position herself alongside learners during their attempts, using body language and positioning to guide their efforts. When a student orca successfully flushed a seal, the teacher would often join in the celebration, reinforcing the positive outcome with social approval. The knowledge transfer followed predictable patterns that mirrored human cultural transmission. Close family members learned first. Then the technique spread to other pod members through observation and practice. Younger orcas picked up the behavior more quickly than adults, showing the kind of age-related learning flexibility that characterizes many intelligent species. Within 2 years, nearly half the pod had mastered some version of the seal flushing technique. But the really fascinating part was watching how different individuals adapted the basic technique to their own strengths and local conditions. Some orcas developed variations that worked better in different tidal conditions. Others modified the approach to target different areas of the beach or different seal species. The original innovation had become a platform for further innovation, spawning a whole family of related hunting techniques. This process of innovation, testing, refinement, and cultural transmission represents one of the clearest examples of non-human technology development ever documented. The orcas weren't just learning a new behavior, they were developing a tool, even though the tool was their own understanding of physics and animal behavior rather than a physical object. They were creating intellectual technology and passing it down through generations. The memory component of this process is equally impressive. Orcas who learned the technique as juveniles were observed using it successfully years later, even after moving to different territories with different coastal conditions. They retained not just the basic behavior, but the underlying principles that allowed them to adapt the technique to new environments. It's the difference between memorizing a recipe and understanding cooking. One is rote repetition, the other is transferable knowledge. The social dynamics surrounding the innovation were complex and revealing. The young female who developed the technique gained considerable status within her pod, becoming a focal point for learning activities and social attention. Other pod members would position themselves near her during hunting expeditions, clearly seeking opportunities to observe and learn. She had essentially become the pod's resident expert on coastal hunting technology. Research teams studying this population have documented the technique spreading beyond the original pod through intergroup encounters. When pods that had mastered seal flushing met other orca groups, the behavior would sometimes transfer through social interaction and observation. It was cultural diffusion in action ideas, spreading through populations via social networks, just like human innovations spreading from community to community. The implications of this case study extend far beyond a single hunting technique. It demonstrates that orcas possess the cognitive architecture necessary for cumulative culture, the ability to build upon previous innovations to create increasingly sophisticated behaviors. They can recognize problems, develop solutions, test and refine those solutions, and pass the knowledge to others who can further modify and improve it. This capacity for cultural evolution means that orca populations can potentially adapt to changing environmental conditions not just through genetic evolution, which takes thousands of years, but through behavioral innovation that can spread through populations within generations. It's a form of adaptation that's both faster and more flexible than biological evolution, allowing intelligent species to respond to environmental challenges in real time. The seal flushing innovation also reveals something profound about orca cognition. They understand cause and effect relationships well enough to manipulate them intentionally. The young orca who developed this technique had to understand that her tail movements could create waves, that waves could move water onto shore, that water movement could displace seals, and that displaced seals would be vulnerable to predation. That's a chain of causality that requires sophisticated reasoning ability. Perhaps most importantly, this case study demonstrates that orcas are not just intelligent in the abstract sense, their intelligence is practical, creative, and socially embedded. They use their cognitive abilities to solve real-world problems, share solutions with their communities, and build upon each other's innovations in ways that make their entire culture more sophisticated over time. They are, in the truest sense, problem solvers whose solutions become part of their cultural heritage. Night echo hunt. The ocean at midnight is a different world entirely, where moonlight filters down through the water column in silver shafts that fade to black before reaching the depths. Here, in the liquid darkness where most surface dwellers fear to venture, orcas become creatures of pure stealth and acoustic precision. This is their night shift, the hours when they transform from the chatty social mammals of daylight into silent shadows pursuing prey that exists in a realm of perpetual twilight. Tonight's hunt begins 50 feet below the surface, where the water temperature drops several degrees and the last traces of surface light give way to an eternal midnight. The orca pod moves through this darkness like submarines running silent, their usual vocal chatter replaced by an acoustic discipline that would impress military sonar operators. Every click, every whistle, every social call has been suppressed in favor of a hunting mode that relies on stealth above all else. Their target lives in this deep water realm, squid, those alien invertebrates that have mastered the art of deep ocean survival through intelligence, camouflage, and rapid movement. Unlike the fish that resident orcas pursue during daylight hours, squid are sophisticated prey capable of color-changing camouflage, rapid acceleration, and evasive maneuvers that would challenge any predator. Hunting them requires patience, precision, and the kind of three-dimensional thinking that comes naturally to animals who live their entire lives in a medium where up and down are mere suggestions. The lead orca, an experienced female with decades of night hunting knowledge, begins the systematic search pattern that will guide the pod's efforts. Her echolocation clicks are carefully modulated, powerful enough to penetrate the darkness and detect prey at considerable distances, but subtle enough to avoid spooking the sensitive cephalopods she's seeking. Each click sends out acoustic waves that bounce off anything solid in the water column, returning with information about size, distance, texture, and movement patterns. The returning echoes paint a three-dimensional picture in the orca's brainsonic landscape, more detailed than any visual system could provide in these dark waters. A large object moving at 40 feet distance, roughly cylindrical shape, density consistent with squid flesh rather than fish muscle. The subtle differences in echo characteristics that distinguish a 10-foot giant Pacific squid from a school of smaller market squid. The acoustic signature of tentacles versus fins, of soft tissue versus hard shells. As the hunting party spreads out to cover more water, each member maintains acoustic contact through calls so low frequency they're barely audible to human ears. These infrasonic communications travel vast distances through the water, allowing the pod to coordinate their movements across miles of ocean while remaining virtually silent to their prey. It's like having a private radio network that operates below the hearing range of anyone you're trying to sneak up on. The first contact comes as a subtle change in the echo pattern, something large and mobile moving through the water column about 200 yards ahead. The lead orca adjusts her position slightly, angling to intercept, while simultaneously communicating the target's location to her podmates through subtle changes in her swimming pattern and precisely timed low-frequency calls. The choreography of a coordinated hunt begins to unfold in three-dimensional space. Squid hunting requires different tactics than pursuing fish or marine mammals. These cephalopods are masters of sudden acceleration, capable of jet propulsion that can carry them away from danger at speeds that would leave most predators struggling to keep up. They can also change color and texture instantaneously, making them nearly invisible against the varied backgrounds of the deep ocean. Most challenging of all, they're intelligent enough to recognize predator behavior patterns and adapt their evasive strategies accordingly. The orcas respond to these challenges with tactics that showcase their own considerable intelligence. Rather than pursuing squid directly, they often position themselves to drive their prey toward other pod members, a three-dimensional version of the herding behaviors they use when hunting fish. They use the ocean's natural features as tools, driving squid toward thermoclines or current boundaries that might slow their escape or limit their movement options. As the hunt intensifies, something magical begins to happen in the water around the pursuing orcas. Their movement through the dark ocean disturbs countless microscopic organisms called dinoflagellates, triggering a bioluminescent response that turns their wake into trails of living light. Each stroke of their powerful tails creates swirls of blue-green luminescence that linger in the water like underwater fireworks, marking their passage through the liquid darkness. The bioluminescent display serves multiple purposes in the context of the hunt. The light trails help pod members track each other's movements without relying entirely on echolocation, creating a visual communication system that works in the deep water environment. The luminescence can also be used tactically. Rapid movements that create bright flashes might confuse or startle prey, while slow, controlled swimming minimizes the light signature and maintains stealth. But perhaps most remarkably, Experienced orcas seem to understand how to use bioluminescence as a hunting tool. They can create light patterns that mimic the natural bioluminescent displays of deep-water prey species, essentially using the ocean's own lighting system as camouflage or deception. A careful tail movement that creates the right pattern of disturbed plankton might look like a small fish to a hungry squid, drawing it within range of a patient predator. The actual capture, when it comes, happens with surprising speed. The target squid, a magnificent specimen nearly 6 feet long with tentacles that trail gracefully through the water, suddenly finds itself surrounded by massive shapes that appeared from the darkness with supernatural stealth. Its color-changing abilities flash through a rapid sequence of pattern alarm signals, camouflage attempts, aggressive displays, but the orcas have positioned themselves too well for escape to be possible. The kill is quick and efficient, a testament to the orcas' understanding of cephalopod anatomy and their ability to coordinate precisely in three-dimensional space. The successful hunter shares her prize with pod members according to complex social protocols that govern food distribution during communal hunts. The sharing process itself involves sophisticated communication about portion sizes, eating order, and social obligations that reflect the deep cultural traditions of orca society. As the night progresses, the hunt continues with the patient rhythm of apex predators who understand that success comes from persistence rather than haste. Each squid captured represents hours of careful stalking, precise coordination, and the kind of acoustic artistry that transforms echolocation from simple navigation tool to sophisticated hunting instrument. The pod moves through the bioluminescent water like a pack of wolves made of liquid shadow and living light, pursuing prey that exists in a realm where only the most skilled predators can survive. The deep-water hunt reveals orcas at their most primal and most sophisticated simultaneously ancient predators, using cutting-edge biological technology to pursue intelligent prey in an environment that challenges every aspect of their considerable abilities. Here in the midnight ocean, surrounded by trails of disturbed bioluminescence and guided by acoustic senses that map the invisible world around them, they embody the perfect fusion of raw predatory power and evolutionary refinement that has made them masters of every ocean on Earth. When dawn finally begins to lighten the eastern horizon, the hunting party will gradually ascend toward the surface, their night's work complete. They'll resume their daylight behaviors, the social calls, the surface activity, the interactions that make them seem almost playful compared to their midnight selves. But for now, in the last hours before sunrise, they remain creatures of the deep night, moving through bioluminescent trails in an ancient dance of predator and prey that has played out in these dark waters for millions of years. Dawn again. Light returns to the depths as it has for countless mornings, filtering down through layers of green-blue water in shafts that dance and waver with the current. The ocean breathes slowly around us, a rhythm older than continents, and in this gentle awakening, new life stirs within our pod. A calf, barely 3 days born, moves uncertainly beside her mother, her small dorsal fin catching fragments of that descending sunlight as she learns the ancient choreography of breathing, diving, staying close. I watch from my position at the pod's edge, my own breathing steady and measured after so many decades of these morning rituals. The scars along my flanks tell stories of seasons survived, of hunts both successful and lean, of storms weathered and calms embraced. My dorsal fin, slightly curved now with age, cuts through the water with the easy confidence of countless miles traveled. The youngster's movements are still tentative, her breathing irregular, but there is something in the way she tilts her head toward sounds that speaks of intelligence, awakening, of awareness beginning to unfold like kelp fronds reaching toward light. The mother calls softly to her calf, a series of clicks and whistles that carry meaning deeper than words. It is a language written in pressure waves and frequency, in the subtle modulations that distinguish family from stranger, safety from threat, home from the vast unknown. I add my own voice to hers, a lower register born of size and experience, welcoming the new one into the complex vocabulary of our pod's identity. Each family of orcas speaks its own dialect, patterns of sound that have been refined over generations, and now this small calf begins her first lessons in the tongue that will connect her to us for life. The art of echolocation comes naturally but requires practice to master. I demonstrate for her benefit, sending out measured clicks that bounce back from the seafloor below, from the school of salmon moving like liquid silver in the distance, from the rocky outcropping where harbor seals occasionally rest. The returning echoes paint pictures in sound, three-dimensional maps that reveal texture, density, distance, movement. The calf tries to mimic my calls, her young voice thin but eager, and though her sonic portraits are still blurry and incomplete, I can hear in them the promise of the hunter she will become. We are a family built not just of blood but of knowledge shared, of techniques passed from one generation to the next like precious heirlooms. The salmon runs that will sustain us through the coming months require patience and coordination that cannot be learned alone. I position myself beside the calf as her mother begins to demonstrate the subtle art of herding fish, how to use our bodies and voices to guide prey into tight balls, how to stun them with precise tail strikes, how to share the catch according to the pod's complex social hierarchies. The calf watches with the intense focus that young orcas bring to everything, her dark eyes tracking each movement, each sound, each gesture that carries meaning. When her mother glides beneath a salmon and strikes upward with her tail, sending the fish spiraling stunned toward the surface, the calf attempts the same motion with clumsy enthusiasm. Her strike misses entirely, but there is no frustration in the failure, only the patient repetition that marks all learning in the deep waters. As the morning progresses, I find myself remembering my own early lessons, delivered in these same waters by matriarchs, now long gone to whatever depths claim the ancestors. The techniques they taught me have served through seasons of plenty and seasons of struggle, through the warming and cooling cycles that shift the ocean's patterns, through the arrival of new sounds that speak of changes in the world above. Each generation adds its own modifications to the old methods, small improvements learned through necessity or discovered by chance, and so the tradition evolves while remaining fundamentally unchanged. The pod moves together with fluid precision, each member occupying their position in formations refined over decades. The oldest females lead, their knowledge of feeding grounds and migration routes written in memory that spans lifetimes. The younger adults flank and support, their strength and speed available for the demanding work of long hunts. The adolescents practice and learn, testing their skills while remaining close enough for guidance. And now, at the formation's protected heart, swims new life, another link in the chain that connects us to past and future alike. I take my turn guiding the calf through the fundamentals of pod communication, teaching her how subtle shifts in position convey intention, how the angle of a fin or the spacing between family members speaks volumes to those who know how to read such signals. She learns that we are never truly silent, that even in rest we maintain contact through gentle touches, synchronized breathing, the quiet reassurance of presence acknowledged and returned. The afternoon brings opportunities for more advanced lessons as we encounter a pod of dolphins, their chatter and acrobatics, a stark contrast to our more measured approach to life. The calf watches with fascination as these smaller cousins leap and spin, but she also observes how our two groups maintain respectful distance, how certain sounds indicate friendship, while others suggest the need for caution. The ocean holds many voices, and learning to distinguish between them may one day mean the difference between safety and danger. As evening approaches, the light that began our day starts its retreat back toward the surface, leaving us in the deeper blues that feel most like home. The calf has begun to master the rhythm of the pod's movement, her small body finding its place in our procession through the darkening waters. Her breathing has become more regular, her echolocation calls more confident, her understanding of our shared language subtly but noticeably improved. Tomorrow will bring new lessons, new challenges, new opportunities for growth and discovery. The salmon runs will continue, the tides will turn, the seasons will shift in their ancient patterns, and through it all, our pod will adapt and endure as we have for countless generations before. The knowledge I carry will pass to younger voices, as theirs will in turn pass to the generations yet to come, an unbroken current of wisdom flowing through time like the very waters that sustain us. In the gathering darkness, as we settle into our traveling formation for the night's journey, I listen to the small sounds the calf makes as she practices her calls. Each click and whistle carries within it the promise of all she will become, all she will learn, all she will one day teach to calves not yet born. The ocean breathes around us, patient and eternal, and in its depths, life continues its quiet work of renewal, generation after generation, beneath stars that reflect like scattered coins on the surface far above our passing forms.